In Victorian London, women who sold their bodies weren't just risking their reputation, they risked being strapped down and forcibly examined with steel instruments by male doctors, and that was the legal part. Quick subscribe reminder if you're a regular. Also, where's everyone at tonight, or morning, or afternoon? Drop your location and time. Got comments from Seattle to Stockholm last time. The time zone thing never stops being weird to me. So we're going back to Victorian London tonight, but hold on, get yourself comfortable first. I mean it. Fix your pillows, grab that blanket. This one's worth settling in for. Morning in London, 1865. You're waking up to the taste of coal dust and fog so thick you could scoop it with a spoon. Your eyes adjust to the grey half-light filtering through a cracked window, and immediately you know something's wrong. This isn't your comfortable bed. The straw mattress beneath you crackles with every shift of your weight, probably full of more fleas than actual straw. Something worse. Welcome to the life of a Victorian prostitute. Not exactly the glamorous historical setting your high school teacher covered, huh? The woman sharing your mattress stirs beside you, her body radiating heat in the cold, damp room. Meet Mary. She's 19, though her eyes look 40. Arrived in London 6 months ago from some tiny village in Yorkshire with dreams of becoming a lady's maid. Yeah, that didn't work out. Mary stretches and winces. Her body aches in places she didn't know could ache before coming to London. Last night was busy. 18 men. Not her record, but close enough. In the better brothels uptown, the high-class girls might see 3 or 4 gentlemen a night. Down here in the East End, you take what you can get. Up, you lazy whores. The door bangs open, and the room's dim light is cut off by Mrs. Harper's massive silhouette. Inspection in 5 minutes. Anyone with the clap gets no breakfast. Ah, Mrs. Harper, 5 feet of pure terror wrapped in a gaudy dressing gown. The madame of this particular establishment isn't known for her morning cheer, or any cheer, really. You hear about Jenny, whispers the woman on Mary's other side as they struggle to their feet. Poor thing couldn't walk after that sailor last night. Harper made her see 5 more after him anyway. Mary's stomach churns. She'd seen Jenny this morning, curled up in the corner room where they put the sick girls. The doctor wouldn't be called. Doctors cost money, and girls like Jenny were cheaper to replace than repair. I spent way too long researching Victorian brothels for this story. Like, I had to clear my browser history afterward, and now I'm definitely on some watch list. But here's what I found that surprised me. These brothels weren't hidden away. They operated pretty much in plain sight, especially in certain neighbourhoods. And get this, there were actually more brothels than schools in London during this period. Not exactly the prudish Victorians from your history books, right? Mary shuffles with the other girls, 12 in total, into the inspection room. It's really just a kitchen table where Mrs. Harper checks them for obvious signs of disease each morning. The smell of burned porridge hangs in the air, the promise of the only meal many of the girls will get until evening. Arms up, legs apart, Mrs. Harper barks, moving down the line. You're thinking, this is how I die, with 12 half-naked women in a freezing room that smells like someone died in it, which, if we're being honest, someone probably did last winter. Let me paint you a picture of what Mary sees as she stands there, shivering. The inspection room windows face east, and weak morning sunlight filters through a yellow haze of fog and coal smoke. London's famous pea soupers, they called these fogs. So thick you could barely see your hand in front of your face. So toxic they killed thousands every year. The walls are stained yellow from decades of coal fires and tobacco. The floorboards are uneven and rotting in places, and there's a suspicious dark patch in the corner that nobody talks about. You, Mrs. Harper jabs a finger at a red-headed girl who can't be more than 15. You're bleeding. Get yourself cleaned up before the morning customers. But Mrs. Harper, it's not I'm just having my monthly. The slap echoes through the room. Did I ask for excuses? Men don't pay to hear your problems. They pay for a clean hole, so make sure yours is ready. Like I said, Mrs. Harper isn't exactly running for Mother of the Year. I found this journal entry from an actual brothel worker from the 1860s. She wrote, "Some nights I see so many men I lose count. My body feels hollow, like they've scraped out everything inside me that made me human. Kind of puts our bad days at the office in perspective, doesn't it?" In case you're wondering how Mary ended up here, her story wasn't unusual. London in the 1860s was booming. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing. People poured in from the countryside looking for work. For men, there were factories, shipyards, construction. For women, the options were limited. You could be a factory worker making about 7 shillings a week, which is roughly $30 in today's money, for 6 days of 14-hour shifts, or a seamstress hunched over by candlelight until you went blind, earning maybe 5 shillings on a good week. A shop girl, 9 shillings if you were lucky, but you needed good moral character for that job, which meant if the boss found out you weren't a virgin, you were done. Or you could work in a brothel and make 7 shillings in a single night. Mary hadn't planned on this life. She'd arrived at the docks 6 months earlier with £3 saved up, her life savings, and a letter of recommendation for a position as a housemaid that turned out to be for a house that didn't exist. "Fresh off the boat, aren't you, love?" a man had said, appearing beside her as she stood crying on the dock. "I know someone who could help a pretty girl like you." 3 hours later, she'd met Mrs. Harper. 3 hours and 10 minutes later, she'd met her first customer. After inspection, Mary pulls on her work clothes, a cheap imitation of what the fashionable ladies are wearing uptown, but cut lower in the bust and higher at the ankle. The fabric is rough against her skin, probably some kind of wool blend that's been worn by a dozen girls before her. Everything in this place gets recycled, even the girls themselves. "You're with Mr. Wallace first," Mrs. Harper tells her, checking a grimy notebook. "He likes the Northerners, thinks you're more, what's his word, authentic." She snorts. "After him, you've got 3 regulars and whatever walk-ins come by. Thursday's usually busy. Men getting their fun in before the weekend with the wife?" Mary nods. Mr. Wallace isn't the worst. He's quick, at least, and sometimes brings her a ribbon or a sweet. The thought of the hard candy makes her stomach growl. The porridge from breakfast sits like a lump in her gut, filling but barely edible. It's meant to be cheap and starchy, to keep the girls going through long nights with minimal expense. "Hey," a voice whispers behind her. It's Betsy, the closest thing Mary has to a friend here. "I saved you this from yesterday." She slips Mary a slightly wrinkled apple. Its skin dull, but the fruit still firm. Mary's eyes widen. Fresh fruit is a luxury here. "Where'd you get this?" "That solicitor, the one with the birthmark. His wife packed him lunch and he gave it to me. Said I was too skinny." They share a dark laugh. Men like the solicitor come here and pay to use their bodies, then get concerned about their diets. The absurdity isn't lost on them. The house begins to stir as the first customers arrive. It's mostly working men at this hour, labourers stopping by before their shift, shopkeepers slipping away while their apprentices mind the store, clerks who told their wives they had an early meeting. Mary takes a bite of the apple, savouring the burst of sweetness. Little pleasures, that's what keeps you going in a place like this. Wait, you think I'm making this up? The apple thing? Nope. I actually found this detail in a diary from a reformer who interviewed women in these brothels in the 1850s. Fresh fruit was so rare that one woman saved an orange for 3 days, just taking tiny nibbles to make it last. Imagine being so deprived that an orange becomes your most prized possession. Through the thin walls, Mary can hear the morning business picking up, the fake moans, the creaking bed frames, the occasional laugh or cry. Each room in this narrow townhouse holds different stories, different horrors. In the room to the left, there's Ellen, who came from Ireland during the famine and has been here 8 years, ancient in prostitute years. To the right is Sarah, who was sold to the brothel by her own father when she was 13. Across the hall is the specialty room where Lucy caters to men with particular interests. The walls of that room are thicker, but sometimes the sounds still escape. Mary finishes the apple, core and all, and checks herself in the cracked mirror on the wall. Her face is pale with dark circles under her eyes, but Mrs. Harper has taught them all how to hide these imperfections. There's a pot of rouge on the table, shared by all the girls. It contains lead and mercury. They know it's slowly poisoning them, but pale lips don't attract customers. Mary, Mrs. Harper's voice bellows from downstairs. Your first is here. With a deep breath, Mary arranges her face into what passes for a smile and heads down the narrow staircase. The steps creak ominously, and there's no banister to hold on to. One girl broke her ankle on these stairs last winter, and Mrs. Harper had her working on her back the same day. Mr. Wallace waits in the small front parlour, his hat in his hands. He's in his 50s, balding, with the soft hands of a man who's never done manual labour. A clerk of some kind, Mary guesses, though they've never discussed his profession. "Ah, Mary," he says, his Yorkshire accent thickening as it always does when he sees her. It's why he requests her, the reminder of home. Lovely as ever, she curtsies slightly, playing the game. "Good morning, sir. Shall we go up?" In your cosy modern bed, with your clean sheets and your privacy, it's almost impossible to imagine what came next. The mechanical nature of it, the disconnection Mary feels from her own body, like she's floating somewhere near the ceiling, watching someone else go through the motions. Mr. Wallace is indeed quick today. 15 minutes later, he's straightening his collar and pressing 2 shillings into her palm, the usual fee plus a small tip. "You're a good girl, Mary," he says, patting her cheek. A good girl. If her mother could see her now. Once he's gone, Mary has 17 minutes before her next appointment. Just enough time to use the shared basin to wash, to fix her hair, to pretend she's someone else for a moment. This was the reality for tens of thousands of women in Victorian London, not the glamorous courtesans you might see in movies draped in silk and entertaining dukes. Those existed too, the high-class prostitutes who might see one wealthy client a night in luxurious surroundings. But for every one of those there were hundreds of Marys working in cramped, disease-ridden brothels or walking the streets. Funny thing about Victorian London, it was so crowded, so chaotic, that whole neighbourhoods could exist in plain sight while remaining invisible to respectable society. The East End, where Mary's brothel stands, might as well be on another planet from the fashionable West End, though they are only a few miles apart. In the afternoon, after 6 more men, a quick mental calculation tells you that's 7 so far today, and the evening rush hasn't even started, Mary gets a rare hour of freedom. Mrs. Harper allows the girls short excursions, partly as a reward, partly because men sometimes like to pick up women on the street rather than visit a brothel directly. Mary wraps herself in her shawl, the early spring air still carrying winter's bite. The streets of Whitechapel teem with life, vendors hawking everything from hot eels to second-hand boots, children darting between legs on mysterious errands, men and women of every description going about their business. "Oi, Mary," calls a familiar voice. It's Tom, a street vendor who sells roasted chestnuts in winter and fruits in summer. "Looking peaky today, love? Have one on me." He tosses her a small, wrinkled apple, similar to the one Betsy gave her. Mary catches it with a genuine smile. "Thanks, Tom. How's business?" He shrugs expressively. "Can't complain. Well, I could, but who'd listen?" These small interactions, Tom, the baker who sometimes slips her a stale roll, the seamstress who fixes her dresses for free, they're what keep Mary tethered to humanity, reminders that not everyone sees her as just a body to be used. She wanders toward the Thames, the great river that bisects London like a dirty brown snake. The smell hits her before she sees it, a putrid mixture of sewage, industrial waste, and things better not contemplated. Still, it's oddly peaceful here, watching the boats navigate the churning waters. A young woman stands at the edge of a pier, looking down into the murky depths. Something in her stance makes Mary pause. The woman sways slightly, leaning forward. "Miss," Mary calls, moving closer. "Are you all right?" The woman turns, and Mary sees she's hardly more than a girl, perhaps 17. Her eyes are red-rimmed, her clothes decent but worn. "What's it to you?" she asks, but there's no venom in it, just exhaustion. "Nothing," Mary admits. It's not worth it. Whatever it is." The girl laughs, a hollow sound. "Easy for you to say. You've got work." Her gaze flicks over Mary's attire, the slightly too bright colours that mark her profession. "This kind of work you don't want," Mary says quietly. For a moment, they stand in silence. Two women on the edge, one of the river, both of society. "I lost my position," the girl finally says. "Housekeeper found a letter from my sweetheart. Said I was morally unfit to serve in a respectable household." She kicks a pebble into the water. 3 years I worked there, never a complaint. But one letter, she trails off. Mary wants to walk away. She really does. Mrs. Harper would skin her alive if she brought home another stray. But she remembers her first day in London, how close she came to this same pier, this same decision. "There's a charity place," she says hesitantly, "Urania Cottage in Shepherd's Bush, for women who need a fresh start. That writer fellow runs it. Dickens." The girl looks at her suspiciously. "Why would they take me?" "Because that's what they do. Look, I'm not saying it's paradise, but it's not this." Mary gestures to the river. "And it's not what I do either." You know what's wild? Charles Dickens really did run a home for fallen women called Urania Cottage. He worked with a philanthropist named Angela Burdett Coutts, and they tried to rehabilitate prostitutes and teach them skills so they could find other work. I read Dickens' actual letters about it. He interviewed every woman personally and used their stories in his novels. The dude was problematic in many ways, but he did try to help. The girl seems to consider this. Finally, she steps back from the edge. "Shepherd's Bush, you said?" Mary nods. "Ask for Miss Morley. Tell her—" She hesitates. "Tell her Mary from Mrs. Harper's sent you. It's a small thing, this intervention. One girl saved from the river today doesn't change the system that will push another to the same spot tomorrow. But in a life where Mary has so little control, these tiny choices matter." As she watches the girl walk away, Mary realises she's going to be late. Mrs. Harper doesn't tolerate lateness. The punishment will be extra clients tonight, which means less sleep, which means looking worse tomorrow, which means attracting lower-paying customers, which means it's a vicious cycle that's nearly impossible to break. She hurries back through the crowded streets, dodging carriages and costermongers' carts. London in 1865 is a city of extremes, extreme wealth and extreme poverty, often on the same street. As Mary passes from Cheapside to Spitalfields, the buildings grow shabbier, the smells more pungent, the faces harder. A police officer watches her from a corner, his expression a mixture of contempt and interest. The police generally leave brothels alone. Many officers are regular customers after all, but they enjoy reminding women of the town of their precarious status. "Afternoon, officer," Mary says, keeping her eyes down as she passes. "Bit early to be working, isn't it?" he calls after her. She doesn't respond. Engaging would only encourage him, and she can't afford trouble. Not with the new laws being discussed in Parliament. She's heard whispers about something called the Contagious Diseases Act, which would give police the power to arrest any woman they suspect of prostitution and force her to undergo medical examination. The thought makes her shudder. Unlike your snug bed at home, Mary has no true safe space. Even her room at the brothel offers only the illusion of privacy. Mrs. Harper has been known to bring customers in while girls are sleeping if business is particularly good. The streets are dangerous. The police are threats, not protectors. There is nowhere in London where Mary can truly rest. As she approaches Mrs. Harper's establishment, a narrow 3-story building wedged between a gin shop and a pawnbroker, Mary takes a deep breath. She squares her shoulders and arranges her features into the blank mask she wears for work. She's already calculating how many more men she'll need to see today to make her quota and avoid Mrs. Harper's wrath. Inside, the house is busy. A group of sailors on shore leave has arrived, and the parlour is full of loud voices and laughter. Mrs. Harper spots Mary immediately. "Where the bloody hell have you been?" she hisses, grabbing Mary's arm with fingers like talons. "I've got men waiting and not enough girls." "Sorry, Mrs. Harper, I lost track of time." Lost track of, the older woman's face purples. "You'll lose more than that if you pull this again. Now get upstairs and sort yourself out. Room 3. You've got back-to-backs until midnight. Back-to-backs. No breaks between customers. Just an endless parade of men until midnight. Or more likely until the early hours of the morning." As Mary climbs the stairs, her body already aching from the morning's work, she thinks about the girl at the river. She hopes she makes it to Urania Cottage. She hopes Miss Morley remembers her. She hopes something in this god-forsaken city is actually what it claims to be. In the distance, church bells ring out, marking the hour. 5 o'clock, 7 hours to midnight. If each customer takes 20 minutes, with 5 minutes in between, Mary stops calculating. Some things are better not known. She enters room 3 with its sagging bed and stained wallpaper and begins to prepare for the night ahead. As she does, she wonders, not for the first time, how many women in London are doing exactly the same thing at this exact moment. Thousands, certainly. Tens of thousands, possibly. Each with their own story, each with their own path that led them here, each hoping for something better tomorrow, though experience has taught them better than to expect it. It's strange to think that while her own comfortable middle-class ancestors were living their proper Victorian lives, going to church, observing strict social codes, pretending sex didn't exist, this parallel world was thriving just around the corner. History books tend to focus on the royals, the politicians, the generals, but for every Queen Victoria, there were thousands of Marys. Tomorrow, Mary will wake up again on that straw mattress. She'll endure another inspection, another day of men, another struggle to maintain some shred of herself amid it all. She'll look for small kindnesses, an apple, a friendly word, a moment of genuine connection. And maybe, if she's very lucky, she'll find a way out. But tonight, as you lie in your comfortable bed with your soft pillows and clean sheets, warm and safe and free to make your own choices, spare a thought for Mary and all the women like her. Their stories deserve to be told too. Unlike your cosy bed and peaceful night ahead, Mary's evening is just beginning. A heavy tread on the stairs tells her the first sailor has arrived. The first night Mary arrived at Mrs. Harper's establishment, she didn't sleep a wink. Not because of the noise, though God knows there was plenty of that. Not even because of the men. There had been 3 that first night, each one a blur in her memory. No, she stayed awake because she was afraid of the other girls. "Fresh meat," one had whispered as Mrs. Harper showed Mary to her bed. Really just a corner of a mattress shared with 2 others. Wonder how long this one'll last. The memory surfaces as Mary prepares for her next customer, the second sailor of the evening. She washes quickly in the basin of tepid water, the same water the last 5 girls have used. The trick, she's learned, is to skim from the top and avoid stirring up whatever's settled at the bottom. 6 months ago, such a thought would have horrified her. Now it's just another Tuesday. Or is it Wednesday? The days blend together in this place. A knock at the door, too soft to be Mrs. Harper. Or Mary? It's Betsy, her red hair wild around her face. That sailor's asking for Lucy, but she's still with the old colonel. Harper says you're to go down instead. Mary nods, pinching her cheeks to bring some colour to them. "Thanks, I owe you." Betsy snorts. "We all owe each other in this place." You're probably wondering why Mary doesn't just run away. Good question. I wondered the same thing when I was researching Victorian prostitutes. I mean, they weren't chained to the beds or anything, but the reality was way more complicated. First off, where would she go? London in the 1860s wasn't exactly brimming with opportunities for single women. Second, most brothel girls were deeply in debt to their madams. See, Mrs. Harper charged the girls for everything. Their room, their food, their clothes, even the rouge they wore. At extortionate rates, of course. So even though Mary might earn 7 shillings in a night, after Mrs. Harper took her cut and added on her expenses, Mary might only see a few pence. It was a system designed to keep them trapped. Pretty messed up, right? The sailor waiting in the parlour is young, maybe 20, with sunburned cheeks and nervous hands. When he sees Mary instead of Lucy, his face falls briefly before he recovers. "Evening, miss," he says, clutching his cap. Tom Baker." "Mary," she replies, though he didn't ask. Names aren't particularly important in these transactions. "Shall we go up?" He follows her, his boots heavy on the creaking stairs. Room 3 is technically occupied, so she leads him to the end of the hall, to the smallest room, barely more than a closet, with a narrow bed squeezed inside. It's where the new girls usually work, but Lucy has seniority. "First time?" Mary asks, seeing how he hovers uncertainly in the doorway. "That obvious?" He grins sheepishly. "The lads all chipped in. Said I couldn't call myself a proper sailor without, you know." She does know. She sees dozens of Toms every month. Young men propelled by peer pressure and curiosity. Some are rough, thinking they need to prove something. Others, like this one, are almost endearingly clueless. "Well then," she says, managing a smile that doesn't reach her eyes, "let's make sure you get your money's worth. I'll spare you the details of what happens next, but I will tell you this. While it's happening, Mary is thinking about the room she grew up in back home, the patchwork quilt her mother made, the view of the hillside from her window, the smell of bread baking, little mental escapes. That's how most of the women survive this work. They go somewhere else in their heads. Okay, I feel like I need to address something here. You're probably thinking, wow, this is dark. And yeah, it is, but I'm not making this stuff up or exaggerating for effect. When I was researching Victorian prostitution, I was genuinely shocked by how brutal it was. These women's lives were incredibly hard, and yet history has mostly erased them or turned them into either punchlines or moral cautionary tales. So, while this isn't exactly cheerful bedtime material, I think their stories deserve to be told honestly. Afterward, Tom the sailor leaves 2 shillings, the standard rate, and a mumbled thanks. Mary straightens her dress, fixes her hair, and heads back downstairs for the next customer. The night is still young. Mrs. Harper intercepts her at the bottom of the stairs. "Not so fast. I need to talk to you." Mary's stomach tightens. Conversations with Mrs. Harper rarely end well for anyone. The madame leads her into the small office off the main parlour. It smells of stale tobacco and cheap perfume. Mrs. Harper settles her considerable bulk into a chair behind a cluttered desk and gestures for Mary to sit on the stool opposite. "You've been here, 6 months now?" "Yes, ma'am, just about." "And you've learned the trade well enough. Not top-shelf quality, mind you, but serviceable." Mrs. Harper squints at her appraisingly. "It's time you started earning your keep properly." Mary blinks. "I've been meeting my quotas." "Barely. And you've still got that debt to work off. Your room and board, the dresses I provided, the doctor that one time. It's a familiar conversation. The debt never seems to get smaller, no matter how many men Mary services." Mrs. Harper reaches into a drawer and pulls out a small glass bottle. "Starting tonight, you take a spoonful of this before you go to work. Keeps the babies away." Mary stares at the murky liquid. She's heard of such concoctions. Herbs, chemicals, who knows what else. Some of the girls say they work. Others ended up doubled over in pain, bleeding for days. And, Mrs. Harper continues, you start taking specialty customers. The knot in Mary's stomach tightens further. Specialty customers pay more, but they want things the regular girls don't provide. Things that leave bruises, or worse. "I don't think I wasn't asking, girl." Mrs. Harper's tone hardens. "Lucy's moving up to the West End house next week. Someone's got to take her place, and you've got the right look. Young enough to seem innocent, old enough it's not troublesome. You'll get an extra shilling per specialty?" Half of that comes to me, of course. Of course. Back in your comfortable bed, it's probably hard to imagine what Mary's feeling right now. The crushing weight of knowing things are about to get worse, not better, the lack of any real choice in the matter, the desperate calculation of whether this new arrangement will at least help her pay off her debt faster. Mary takes the bottle reluctantly. Yes, Mum. Good girl. Now, I've got a gentleman arriving at 9 who's paid for something special. I'll send him up to the Red Room. You be there ready by 8:30. The Red Room. Even the name makes Mary's skin crawl. It's on the top floor, away from the regular rooms, with thick walls and strange implements hanging on them. What kind of specialty does he want? Mrs. Harper's smile doesn't reach her eyes. He likes to play schoolmaster, discipline and all that. Bring tears if you can. He pays extra for those. When Mary returns to her shared room to prepare, she finds Betsy already there, applying rouge to her cheeks. Harper's moving me to specialties, Mary says quietly, sitting on the edge of the mattress. Betsy pauses, the rouge pot hovering mid-air. Already? Must be desperate with Lucy leaving. She sighs. Which ones? Or schoolmaster tonight. Don't know about the rest yet. Could be worse. The schoolmaster types usually just want to lecture and spank a bit. It's the quiet ones you have to watch for. Betsy resumes applying her makeup. I had a judge last week, wanted to sentence me for my crimes. Made me beg for mercy and everything. Mary shudders. How do you get through it? Betsy shrugs, but her eyes are kind. Same way we get through everything else in this godforsaken place, 1 hour at a time. She picks up a small tin from the table. Here, rub this where you think he'll hit. Numbs the skin a bit. Mary takes the tin gratefully. Thanks. Oh, and Mary... If he wants to use his cane, make sure he stays below the ribs. I had a girl in Liverpool who took a bad hit to the kidney, pissed blood for a week. This kind of advice, practical, matter-of-fact, potentially life-saving, is the real education Mary has received these past 6 months, not the kind her mother had hoped for when she scraped together Mary's train fare to London, dreaming of her daughter becoming a respectable lady's maid. I found an actual training manual for Victorian madams while researching this. It advised them on how to prepare new girls for specialty work, their euphemism for fetishes and rough treatment. The manual recommended starting with mild disciplines before moving on to more elaborate scenarios. It's unnerving how businesslike they were about it all. At 8:30, Mary enters the Red Room and begins to prepare. She changes into the costume hanging on the door hook, a mockery of a schoolgirl's uniform, the skirt scandalously short, the white blouse nearly transparent. The outfit looks as though it's been worn by dozens of girls before her. The fabric worn thin in places, stains that never quite washed out. The room itself is sparsely furnished. A straight-backed wooden chair, a small desk, a narrow bed with leather straps attached to the posts. The walls are painted a deep crimson, not to make the room feel warm or inviting, but to hide stains. Mary knows this because Mrs. Harper had mentioned it once, casually, as though discussing the weather rather than blood. On the wall hang implements of discipline, canes of varying thickness, leather straps, riding crops. Mary tries not to look at them as she positions herself at the desk, arranging her features into what she hopes is an appropriately demure expression. The clock on the mantel ticks away the minutes. 8:45, 8:50. Just as the clock strikes 9, heavy footsteps approach the door. The man who enters is not what Mary expected. She'd imagined someone older, severe-looking. Instead, he appears to be in his 30s, well-dressed, with a pleasant face and gentle eyes, the kind of man you'd pass on the street without a second glance, the kind who might have a wife and children at home, who attends church on Sundays, who is respected in his community. "Good evening," he says, his voice soft. "You must be my new pupil." And so the game begins. Later, much later, when her lesson is over and the schoolmaster has gone, Mary sits alone on the edge of the bed, applying Betsy's numbing salve to the angry red welts across her thighs and buttocks. Her cheeks are still damp with the tears he'd paid extra for. The door opens and Mrs. Harper enters, a glass of gin in her hand. She surveys Mary with a critical eye. "Well, how'd it go?" "Fine," Mary says flatly. He seemed pleased. "Left an extra half-crown for you." Mrs. Harper tosses a coin onto the bed beside Mary. "See? Told you specialties pay better. Half a crown for her dignity, for the marks that will take days to fade, for the part of herself that feels a little more distant, a little harder to reach." Mrs. Harper must sense some of this because her tone softens slightly. First time's the worst. It gets easier. She holds out the gin. "Here, for the pain." Mary takes the glass and drinks deeply, welcoming the burning sensation in her throat. It's a distraction from the other pain, at least. "Rest up. You've got regular customers the rest of the night." Mrs. Harper turns to leave, then pauses. "Oh, and Mary? The specialty gentleman wants to book you again next week. Regular appointment. That's good for business." After she's gone, Mary finishes the gin and stares at the half-crown. Good for business, that's all any of this is. Business, the buying and selling of flesh, of pain, of fantasy. She wonders, not for the first time, what her life might have been if that letter of recommendation had been real, if that position as a housemaid had existed. She might have worked 14-hour days, been at the constant beck and call of a demanding mistress, slept in a cold attic room, earned perhaps a quarter of what she makes now, and yet a knock at the door interrupts her thoughts. It's one of the younger girls, Emily, barely 16, with a perpetually runny nose. "Mary, Harper says you're needed downstairs. Customer asking for you special." "Tell her I'll be right down." Mary hides the half-crown in the small cloth pouch she keeps sewn into her corset alongside her other meagre savings. Then she washes her face, reapplies her rouge, and puts on a clean dress. The customer waiting in the parlour is a regular, Mr. Peterson, a middle-aged banker who visits once a week, always requesting Mary if she's available. He likes to talk, mostly. Sometimes they don't even get to the physical part until his time is nearly up. Mary suspects he's lonely, though he mentions a wife and children in his rambling conversations. "Mary, my dear," he exclaims when he sees her, rising from his chair. "Lovely as always." "Good evening, Mr. Peterson," she says, mustering a smile. "Shall we go upstairs?" As they climb the stairs to her regular room, Mary realizes she's grateful for Mr. Peterson tonight. After the schoolmaster, his gentle, almost tentative approach will be a relief. He'll want to talk about his week, his troubles at the bank, his wife's latest ailment. He'll ask Mary about her life, and she'll tell him pleasant fictions about her aspirations to save enough to open a small shop someday. They both know it's unlikely, but it's a comfortable pretense. This is another survival strategy in the brothel, cultivating regulars, steady customers who request you specifically, who treat you with some modicum of respect, who aren't violent or diseased. It's not friendship exactly, but it's something close to human connection in a place where such things are rare. In their profession, the girls talked about regulars versus casuals. Regulars might get small concessions, a few extra minutes, a bit more conversation, perhaps even genuine smiles. Casuals got the bare minimum, the physical act they paid for, performed as quickly and efficiently as possible. Hold up. Let me tell you something wild I found in my research. There were actually guidebooks published for men about London's brothels, like Yelp reviews, but for sex work. They'd list the brothels by area, describe the women, and even give prices. One called The Man of Pleasure's Companion from 1865 rated prostitutes using a 5-star system. I kid you not. Victorian bros were basically leaving reviews like, "Good service, would recommend 4 5 stars." As Mary leads Mr. Peterson to her room, they pass the doorway to the shared sleeping quarters. Inside, several off-duty girls are crowded around something, their voices excited. "What's that about?" Mr. Peterson asks curiously. "I'm not sure," Mary says. "Let me check." She pokes her head into the room. "What's all the fuss?" Betsy looks up, her face flushed with excitement. "Look what Ellen got from her ship captain." She holds up a small paper-wrapped package. Real tea from China, not the floor sweepings Harper gives us. It's such a small thing, this package of tea, but in this place, where small pleasures are the only kind to be had, it's a treasure worth celebrating. "We're going to have a proper tea party after closing," Emily says, her nose momentarily forgotten in her excitement. "Can you come, Mary?" Before Mary can answer, Mrs. Harper's voice bellows from downstairs. "If I hear one more word about that bloody tea, I'll confiscate the lot of it. Now get back to work, you lazy trollops." The girls disperse quickly, Ellen hiding the precious tea package in her mattress. Mary returns to Mr. Peterson, who's waiting patiently in the hallway. "Just a gift someone received," she explains with a forced smile. "Nothing important." But it is important. These tiny moments of joy, of camaraderie, of something approaching normal life, they're what keep the girls from ending up like the young woman Mary met at the river. They're air pockets in a drowning existence. Mr. Peterson's session goes as expected, more talking than anything else. He seems distracted tonight, mentioning problems at the bank, worries about his position. Mary makes sympathetic noises at appropriate intervals. This too is part of the job, being whatever the customer needs you to be. Lover, confessor, therapist, punching bag. After he leaves, Mary has 2 more customers, quick, forgettable encounters that blur together in her memory almost as soon as they're over. By the time midnight approaches, she's seen 8 men since afternoon. Her body aches and she longs for sleep, but the night is far from over. In the cramped bathroom at the end of the hall, Mary washes quickly, using the carbolic soap that burns her skin, but that Mrs. Harper insists helps prevent disease. The mirror above the basin reflects a face Mary sometimes struggles to recognise as her own. Pale despite the rouge, eyes too old for her years, lips set in a permanent half-smile that never reaches those eyes. She thinks about the specialties Mrs. Harper has planned for her, about the Red Room and its implements, about how much more her body can endure before it simply gives out. I need to take a second here to mention something important about Victorian prostitutes, their life expectancy. Various studies from the time estimated that once a woman entered prostitution, she had about 6 to 7 years before she died. The causes varied: disease, violence, suicide, alcohol poisoning, botched abortions. A woman who started at 18, like Mary, could expect to be dead by 25. Think about that. 25. Compare that to your life expectancy, lying comfortably in your bed. The average person today can expect to live into their 80s. These women were lucky to see their mid-20s. Back in the shared bedroom, during a rare, quiet moment between customers, Mary finds Betsy sitting on their mattress, sewing a torn seam in one of her work dresses. "How was the schoolmaster?" Betsy asks, not looking up from her stitching. "About what you said. Lectures, spanking, tears on demand." Mary sits beside her, wincing slightly as her bruised flesh meets the hard mattress. "Harper says he wants to book me regular." "That's good. Regulars are safer." Betsy bites off a thread. "I've got 3 now, the judge, a vicar, if you can believe it, and an old army colonel who mostly just wants to look. Just look. Pays full price to have me undress and pose. Doesn't touch, doesn't want to be touched. Says his equipment doesn't work anymore, but he still likes to remember." They share a quiet laugh, the kind that comes from finding humour in the absurd situations their lives have led them to. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Mary asks suddenly. "Finding other work?" Betsy's hands still momentarily. Sometimes, but where would I go? Factory work pays half what we make here, and they work you twice as hard. Domestic service? No respectable household would take me now. She resumes her sewing. Besides, I've got Harper's debt to pay off. Do you think we ever will? Pay it off, I mean. Betsy doesn't answer right away. When she does, her voice is soft. Ellen's been here 8 years, says she's still in debt. The implications of this hang heavy in the air between them. 8 years. If the statistics are to be believed, most prostitutes don't even live that long in the trade. There was a girl here before you, Betsy says after a while. Annie, sweet thing, couldn't have been more than 17. She kept a notebook writing down every penny Harper charged her, every penny she earned, trying to prove the debt was paid. Betsy's voice drops to a whisper. They found her in the Thames. Harper burned the notebook. Mary feels cold despite the stuffy air of the room. I met a girl at the river today. She was going to jump. Did she? No. I told her about Urania Cottage. Betsy looks up surprised. You think that place is real? Not just another brothel with a fancy name to trick girls? I heard it's run by Charles Dickens, the writer. Humph. Men always wanting to save us after they're done using us. Before Mary can respond, the door bangs open. It's Mrs. Harper, her face flushed with alcohol and irritation. There you are, got a gentleman downstairs asking for a northerner. Mary, you're up. As Mary rises to answer the call, Betsy catches her hand briefly. Be careful and save me some of that tea for later. Mary nods, squeezing Betsy's hand in return. Then she straightens her dress, fixes her smile in place, and heads downstairs to meet customer number 9 of the day. The night is still young, and in Mrs. Harper's establishment, the work never really ends. Mary wakes to the sound of someone retching. It's Emily, bent over the chamber pot in the corner, her thin body convulsing as she empties what little is in her stomach. Again, Betsy murmurs, her voice thick with sleep. Mary nods, rubbing her eyes. Emily's been sick for 3 mornings running now. They all know what it likely means, though no one says it aloud. Dawn is just breaking, grey light filtering through the grimy window. In a respectable household, the maids would have been up for hours already, lighting fires, preparing breakfast, polishing silver. In Mrs. Harper's establishment, mornings are for sleep, the precious few hours when the house is quiet and the girls can rest their bodies, but not today. Up, everyone up, Mrs. Harper's voice booms through the house, followed by the banging of a spoon against a pot. Special inspection now. Groans echo through the room as the girls drag themselves from their shared mattresses. Special inspections mean only one thing. Someone important is coming to shop. What time is it? Mary asks, reaching for her dress. Too bloody early, mutters Ellen, the oldest of the girls at 26. Her face is lined despite her youth, her once pretty features hardened by years in the trade. Mary's entire body aches from yesterday's work. The bruises from the schoolmaster throb dully, and a new pain has appeared in her lower back. She ignores it, as she ignores most pains these days. Pain is a constant companion in this life. Acknowledging each new ache would be like greeting every person on a crowded London street. The girls file downstairs to the kitchen, where Mrs. Harper waits with her ledger and a scowling doctor, a small ferrety man with yellowed teeth and quick hands. Line up, she orders. Dr. Winters is checking for the clap and other nasties. Anyone hiding symptoms gets a week in the cellar. The cellar. Mary suppresses a shudder. She's never been sent there, but she's heard the stories. No light, little food, rats that grow bold enough to nibble on sleeping girls. Speaking of rats, I found this wild detail in my research. In some London brothels, the rats got so comfortable around humans that they'd actually climb on the beds while people were, doing the deed. One diary mentioned a customer screaming when a rat ran across his bare back. The prostitute just laughed and said, "That's just Bertie. He lives here same as us." Dr. Winter's examinations are cursory but invasive, his breath reeking of gin despite the early hour. The girls have learned to stare at a fixed point on the wall, to disconnect from their bodies during these inspections. It's the same skill they use with customers, the same mental escape. "This one's brewing something," Dr. Winters says when he reaches Emily, prodding her abdomen with stubby fingers. "Pregnant, most like." Mrs. Harper's face darkens. "You sure?" Early days yet, but the signs are there. Morning sickness, tenderness here. He pokes Emily again, causing her to wince. 2 months, I'd wager. Emily's face crumples. A baby means no work. No work means no income. No income means deeper debt to Mrs. Harper, or worse, dismissal. And for a pregnant prostitute with no family or friends, dismissal is practically a death sentence. "Please, Mrs. Harper," Emily begins, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "I can still work for a while, and then maybe—" "Shut it," Mrs. Harper snaps. "We'll deal with you later." She turns to Dr. Winters. "The rest? Healthy enough. That one's got a chest cough starting." He points to Betsy. "And this one?" His fingers linger on Mary's shoulder. "Some interesting bruising. Special customer." "Not your concern, doctor." Mrs. Harper hands him a few coins. "Same time next week?" After the doctor leaves, Mrs. Harper addresses the assembled girls. "Right. Got a special visitor today, Lord Pembroke's son, looking to sample the wares before deciding if he wants to be a regular patron." A ripple of interest passes through the group. Aristocracy. They don't often get nobility at Mrs. Harper's. The establishment isn't high class enough. The West End houses, with their silk sheets and French champagne, usually cater to the lords and ladies who like to slum it occasionally. "He'll be wanting to see all of you, so look your best. Ellen, help Emily clean herself up. Can't have her puking while his lordship's here. Betsy, do something about that cough. Mary," Mrs. Harper's gaze lingers on her. "The young lord has a fondness for innocence. Play up that country girl act of yours." After breakfast, watery porridge and stale bread, the house erupts into a flurry of preparation. Dresses are mended, hair is arranged, faces are painted. The limited supply of hot water becomes a precious commodity, with the girls bargaining for a share. "You can have 3 minutes if you'll lend me your blue ribbon," Mary tells Betsy. "Deal, but I want it back clean. Last time you returned it with, well, I don't want to know what that was." In the cramped room they share, Mary and Betsy help each other dress, a dance they've performed countless times before. It's intimate in a way that has nothing to do with their profession. The careful fastening of buttons, the gentle tugging of laces, the quiet murmurs of too tight and just right. "Heard anything more about Emily?" Mary asks as Betsy pins her hair. "Harper's furious, says she'll have to send her to Mother Blackwood if she can't take care of it soon." Mother Blackwood, another name that inspires dread, the old woman living near the docks who helps girls take care of unwanted pregnancies. Some return, many don't. She can't go there. You heard what happened to Sarah. Betsy's hands still in Mary's hair. Sarah had been a friend, a girl from Manchester with a quick laugh and clever fingers for picking pockets when customers fell asleep. Mother Blackwood's ministrations had left her bleeding so heavily that even Dr. Winters couldn't stop it. They'd found her cold the next morning, the sheets soaked through. "Maybe we can help her," Mary suggests. "Pool our savings, find somewhere safer." Betsy resumes her pinning. "Maybe, but Harper would still charge her for the lost time. You know how it works." Mary does know. The brutal arithmetic of their lives leaves little room for charity or kindness. Every gesture of help comes with a cost, and they're all already drowning in debt. Their conversation is interrupted by Mrs. Harper's shout from below. "He's here places, everyone!" The young lord, whose title, they soon learn, is Viscount Halford, is a slender young man of perhaps 22, with the soft hands and clear complexion of someone who's never had to work for his supper. He surveys the girls lined up in the parlour with the same critical eye he might use to assess horses at auction. "This is all?" he asks Mrs. Harper, sounding disappointed. "Only my very best for you, my lord," she simpers. "Each one specially selected. Perhaps if you told me your particular interests?" The Viscount's gaze settles on Mary. "That one, she looks untouched somehow." Mrs. Harper beams. "Ah, Mary, excellent choice, my lord. Fresh from the countryside, still has that innocent quality about her. Shall I send her up to our finest room?" "No," he says, still staring at Mary with unsettling intensity. "I want to speak with her first, alone." Mrs. Harper hesitates for only a moment before ushering the other girls from the room. "Of course, my lord. Take all the time you need." When they're alone, the Viscount gestures for Mary to sit beside him on the worn sofa. "You're not really from the countryside, are you?" Mary blinks, surprised by the direct question. "I am, actually. Yorkshire." He studies her face. "And how long have you been in this profession?" 6 months, my lord." He laughs, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "Don't call me that. Not here. It's Richard. Yes, Richard." He leans closer, and Mary forces herself not to recoil at the smell of expensive cologne mixed with stale wine. "Tell me, Mary from Yorkshire, do you enjoy your work?" It's a question customers rarely ask, and one that has no safe answer. Say yes, and she's a wanton woman deserving of whatever rough treatment he might dish out. Say no, and she risks angering both the customer and Mrs. Harper. "I enjoy pleasing others," she says carefully, the rehearsed answer they all use for such inquiries. Richard laughs again. "How diplomatic. I suppose that's better than the truth." He reaches out, tracing a finger along her jawline. "You're quite pretty, in a common sort of way. My father says I should stick to my own kind, but where's the excitement in that?" Mary remains still under his touch, her face a practised mask of mild interest. Inside, her mind is calculating. What does he want? What role should she play? The innocent corrupted, the willing student, the secret temptress? Each customer has their own fantasy, and her job is to become whatever they desire. "Perhaps," she ventures, "you'd be more comfortable upstairs? We could talk more privately?" Richard withdraws his hand. "Not yet. I'm curious about this place. Father wouldn't approve of my being here, you know. Says places like this are breeding grounds for disease and vice." His eyes gleam. "But then, Father's a hypocrite. I've seen the entries in his account books. Charitable donations to addresses in Soho that I happen to know are high-class brothels." Mary nods sympathetically, though her attention is partly on the clock ticking on the mantelpiece. Time spent talking is still charged to the customer, but Mrs. Harper expects the girls to move things along to the more profitable activities quickly. As if reading her thoughts, Richard says, "Don't worry about the time. I've paid for the entire morning. We can talk as long as I want." The entire morning. Mary's heart sinks. She'd hoped to catch a few hours of sleep after the Viscount's visit before the afternoon customers arrived. Now that seems unlikely. "Tell me about the other girls," Richard demands suddenly. "That blonde one looked ill." "Emily, she's just tired, my lord." "Richard, we all are." "And the red-haired one, she has an interesting face." "Betsy, she's from Liverpool, clever with numbers." Richard leans back, watching Mary with those unsettling eyes. "You care about them, don't you? How unusual in a place like this. I'd have thought it would be every whore for herself." The crude word lands like a slap, though Mary's expression doesn't change. "We look after each other when we can?" Richard stands abruptly. "Show me your room. Not the one they've prepared. Your actual sleeping quarters." Alarm flickers through Mary. Mrs. Harper would be furious if she took a client, especially one as highborn as the Viscount, to the squalid room she shares with the other girls, but refusing him directly could be just as dangerous. I'm not sure Mrs. Harper would... Mrs. Harper has been paid handsomely for my discretion. His voice hardens. The room, now. Mary leads him upstairs past the better-appointed rooms where clients are entertained to the cramped space at the end of the hall. Inside, the 3 mattresses lie on the floor, surrounded by the girls' meagre possessions, a chipped hairbrush here, a treasured ribbon there, the hidden package of tea from Ellen's sea captain. Richard surveys the room with open curiosity, picking up items and examining them before setting them down carelessly. So this is how you live, like animals in a pen. Mary says nothing, watching as he moves around the space that, despite its squalor, is the closest thing to home she has in London. And this is your bed? He gestures to the mattress where Mary's worn shawl lies. I share it, with Betsy and Emily. Share it? He looks genuinely surprised. All 3 of you? How do you sleep? However we can, on our sides, mostly. Richard sits on the edge of the mattress, testing its firmness, or rather, its lack thereof. It's lumpy. Yes. And cold, I imagine. In winter, less so now that it's spring. He pats the space beside him. Sit, please. Mary complies, maintaining a careful distance between them. The mattress sags under their combined weight, gravity pulling them slightly toward each other. Have you ever been with someone like me before? Richard asks. Nobility, you mean? Not directly. Directly? Mary chooses her words carefully. Sometimes gentlemen of rank visit Mrs. Harper's, but they usually request the more experienced girls. Richard nods thoughtfully. Then, without warning, he reaches out and takes her hand, turning it over to examine her palm. Working hands, he murmurs. Despite the rouge and powder, you can't hide these. Mary resists the urge to pull away. Her hands are indeed rough, chapped from washing in harsh soap, nails broken and uneven, calluses forming where they never existed during her country life. My mother would be horrified, Richard continues, still holding her hand. She believes people like you choose this life out of moral weakness, that you prefer vice to honest work. He looks up, meeting Mary's eyes. Is that true? Again, that impossible question. Mary takes a risk. Does it matter? You're still here. For a moment she fears she's overstepped, but then Richard laughs, a genuine sound this time. Touché, Mary from Yorkshire. Indeed I am. He releases her hand. I've decided I don't want to couple with you today. Relief floods through Mary, though she keeps her expression neutral. As you wish. Instead, I want to watch. Watch? You and the redhead, Betsy. I want to watch you together. Mary's stomach tightens. It's not an unusual request. Some customers prefer to observe rather than participate, but involving Betsy would mean splitting the fee, and Mrs. Harper would still take her full cut from both of them. Betsy might be with another customer, she says. I've already arranged it with your Mrs. Harper. She'll be up shortly. Richard settles himself more comfortably on the mattress. Don't worry. You'll both be paid. I'm not a complete cad. Before Mary can respond, the door opens and Betsy enters, her expression resigned. She's clearly been informed of the arrangement. My lord, she curtsies slightly. Richard, please. Mary and I were just discussing the sleeping arrangements in this charming room. Perhaps you could join us? I'm going to skip ahead here, past what happens next. Not because I'm squeamish, but because the reality of what the Viscount asked them to do isn't something I want to dwell on. What matters is that they did it because they had no real choice. They performed for his entertainment as they'd been taught to do, and when he finally left, they didn't talk about it. Some experiences are better left unacknowledged. After the Viscount's departure, Mrs. Harper is practically giddy with satisfaction. He's paid for weekly visits, and he specifically requested both of you again. Do you know what this means? It means more money for Mrs. Harper and harder work for Mary and Betsy. But they nod and smile appropriately, playing their parts in this particular theatre. You've both earned a rest, Mrs. Harper continues, unusually generous in her good mood. Take 2 hours, then be ready for the afternoon customers. 2 whole hours of freedom. It's an unexpected luxury, and Mary intends to use every minute of it. She and Betsy retreat to their shared room, where they find Emily curled on her mattress, her face tear-stained. Harper says I have a week, she says, without preamble. Either it's gone by then, or I'm gone. Betsy sits beside her, stroking her hair. We'll figure something out. Mother Blackwood. No, Mary interrupts firmly. Not her. We'll find another way. Emily looks up, hope flickering briefly in her swollen eyes. How? Mary and Betsy exchange glances. They both know there are limited options, and none of them good, but they've also been saving. Small coins hidden in mattresses, in loose floorboards, sewn into the linings of their clothes. Not enough to buy freedom, but perhaps enough to buy a chance. Leave it to us, Betsy says. Just rest now. While Emily drifts into an uneasy sleep, Mary and Betsy sit by the window, voices lowered. I heard about a woman in Whitechapel, Betsy murmurs, midwife who helps girls in trouble, cleaner than Mother Blackwood, they say. How much? £5, from what I've heard. Mary does a quick mental calculation. Her own savings amount to just over £2. Betsy might have similar. Still not enough. The Viscount, Mary says suddenly. He paid well for today, and he wants to see us again next week. Betsy catches on immediately. If we can get Harper to give us our full share, she won't. No, but she might give us more than usual if we tell her we want to buy new dresses for the Viscount's next visit to make sure he keeps coming back. It's a risk. Mrs. Harper is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. She'll be suspicious of any request for extra money, but it might be their only chance to help Emily. Worth trying, Mary agrees, but we'll need more than what we can get from Harper. I could ask my regulars for extra, Betsy suggests. The judge is usually generous when I cry a little, and I could take on more customers in the evenings. The sailors pay less, but if there are enough of them... They're still making plans when a commotion erupts downstairs. Raised voices, something breaking, heavy footsteps on the stairs. Mary and Betsy exchange alarmed glances. This doesn't sound like regular customers. The door bursts open and Mrs. Harper appears, her face flushed with anger, and a "Police!" she hisses, "checking for underage girls. Emily, get in the hidden cupboard, now!" Emily, barely awake, is hustled to the back of the room where a false panel in the wall conceals a small space just large enough for a person to squeeze into. It's not the first time they've had to hide girls from authorities. "What about us?" Mary asks. "You're both old enough. Just keep your mouths shut and let me do the talking." Moments later, 2 policemen enter the room. One is older, his expression bored, as if this is a routine he's performed countless times. The other is younger, perhaps new to the force, his eyes darting around the room with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. "Checking for violations of the Contagious Diseases Act," the older officer announces. "Any girls here been examined recently?" The Contagious Diseases Acts were real laws passed in the 1860s that allowed police to arrest women they suspected of being prostitutes and force them to undergo invasive medical examinations. If found to have a venereal disease, they could be locked up in a hospital for months. The worst part? Men were never checked or confined, even though they were the ones spreading these diseases between multiple women. "All my girls are clean, Officer Wilson," Mrs. Harper says, her tone respectful but firm. "Dr. Winters checks them weekly. Was here just this morning, in fact." "Winters," the officer snorts. "That old soak. His examinations aren't worth the paper they're written on." He gestures to Mary and Betsy. These two look healthy enough, I suppose. The younger officer steps forward. What about the rest? We had reports of 12 women working here. Exaggerations, Mrs. Harper says smoothly. I run a respectable house, just these two and a couple more who are out running errands. The young officer seems about to argue when a call comes from downstairs. Wilson, got something you should see, the older officer sighs. Stay here, he orders, before heading back downstairs, his colleague following reluctantly. Once they're gone, Mrs. Harper quickly opens the hidden panel to release Emily, who emerges gasping for air. Quickly, Mrs. Harper hisses, out the back way, all three of you. I'll send word when it's safe to return. Mary grabs her shawl. Betsy snatches the precious tea package and they help Emily to her feet. The back way means the narrow servant stairs that lead to the alley behind the house, an escape route they've used before during police raids. What did they find downstairs? Mary asks as they hurry down the cramped staircase. Nothing good, I'd wager, Betsy replies grimly. Maybe Lucy's sister finally arrived. Lucy's sister, Mary had almost forgotten. Lucy had mentioned a younger sister coming to London, looking for work. A sister who, if she was anything like Lucy, didn't look her 14 years. Outside, the alley is damp and smells of things best not identified. They hurry along, supporting Emily between them, heads down to avoid eye contact with anyone they pass. Where are we going? Emily asks, her voice weak. Mary and Betsy exchange glances. They have precious little money on them. Just the coins from the day's work so far. Not enough for lodgings, barely enough for food. I know a place, Betsy says finally. Woman I knew from Liverpool runs a coffee shop near the docks. She lets girls shelter in her storeroom sometimes when things get hot. It's not much of a plan, but it's all they have as they navigate the winding streets of East London. Mary can't help but wonder if this is the moment, the chance to break free from Mrs. Harper's, to find another path. But freedom requires money, and the little they have won't last long in a city that devours the poor. For now, though, they're together, 3 women against the world, bound by circumstance and something approaching friendship. In the brutal calculus of their lives, that counts for something. The coffee shop, when they reach it, is little more than a hole in the wall, a narrow storefront, wedged between a butcher's and a pawnbroker's. Inside, it smells of burnt coffee beans and old grease, but it's warm and relatively clean. The woman behind the counter, stout, grey-haired with knowing eyes, takes one look at them and gestures toward a curtained doorway at the back. Trouble at Harper's? Betsy nods. Police? Usual sort or something worse? Not sure yet. The woman sighs. Storeroom's yours till closing, then we'll see. As they settle Emily on a makeshift bed of empty coffee sacks, Mary thinks about the Viscount, about Mrs. Harper, about the police officers who might or might not discover Lucy's underage sister. She thinks about the midwife in Whitechapel who might be able to help Emily if they can scrape together enough money. Mostly, though, she thinks about tomorrow and the next day and all the days after that, days that will likely be filled with the same struggles, the same dangers, the same desperate calculations about how to survive until nightfall. This is the reality of life for women like Mary in Victorian London, not the romanticised version seen in movies or the sanitised version taught in history classes, the raw, unfiltered truth of what it meant to be poor, female, and with few options in a society that valued women primarily as wives, mothers, or objects of desire. But they endure. They find ways to survive, to maintain some shred of humanity in inhuman conditions. They build connections, share resources, protect each other when possible, and sometimes, just sometimes, they find moments of genuine peace, like now, as the 3 women huddle together in the dimly lit storeroom, sharing the last of Ellen's precious tea, brewed weak to make it stretch further. To better days, Betsy whispers, raising her chipped cup. To better days, Mary and Emily echo, though none of them quite believe such days will ever come. 3 days pass before word comes from Mrs. Harper that it's safe to return. The message arrives via Tom, the chestnut seller, who finds Mary at the docks where she's been helping unload fish in exchange for a few pennies and the occasional damaged catch too poor to sell but good enough to eat. Harper says all clear, Tom tells her, glancing around to make sure no one's listening. Police gone, but she's asking after Emily's special. Mary's stomach tightens. Did she say why? Tom shrugs. Just that she needs to see her urgent like. That doesn't sound good. Mary wipes her fish-scaled hands on her already filthy apron and thanks Tom with a worn penny. More than she can afford, but information is its own currency in these streets. She finds Betsy and Emily at the coffee shop where they've been earning their keep by washing dishes and scrubbing floors. Emily looks worse than before. Her face is gaunt, her eyes hollow. The morning sickness has been relentless. Harper wants us back, Mary tells them quietly. Specifically asked for Emily. Betsy's expression darkens. That can't be good. Maybe she's changed her mind, Emily suggests, a flicker of hope in her tired eyes. Maybe she'll let me stay, baby and all. Mary and Betsy exchange glances. They both know better than to expect mercy from Mrs. Harper. In the 3 days they've been gone, they've managed to scrape together almost £3 between them. Still not enough for the Whitechapel midwife, but getting closer. We could run, Mary suggests, not for the first time. Find work in another city, Brighton, maybe, or Manchester. With what money? Betsy asks practically. Train fare for 3 would take everything we've saved. And who'd hire us? We've got no references, no respectable clothes. She's right, and they all know it. The path to escape is narrow and fraught with dangers of its own. I'll go back, Emily says finally. See what she wants. Maybe it won't be so bad. Mary squeezes her hand. We'll all go back. Together. Speaking of sticking together, I feel like I should point out something important about Victorian prostitutes that often gets overlooked. Despite the brutal competition and hard conditions, many of them formed tight-knit communities. They looked out for each other, shared resources, warned each other about dangerous clients. In a world where society had essentially abandoned them, they created their own support systems. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. The return to Mrs. Harper's is tense. The neighbourhood seems unusually quiet, with fewer girls visible on the street corners. The recent police presence has driven much of the trade indoors or to other areas. Mrs. Harper herself opens the door when they knock, a rare occurrence that immediately puts Mary on edge. The madame's expression is unreadable as she ushers them inside. About time, she says, her voice oddly controlled. You've cost me business, disappearing like that. The police, Betsy begins, left the same day. You could have been back earning your keep instead of whatever gutter you've been sleeping in. Mrs. Harper's gaze fixes on Emily. You, my office, now. Emily throws a frightened look at Mary and Betsy before following Mrs. Harper down the hall. The door closes firmly behind them. I don't like this, Mary murmurs. Me neither, Betsy agrees. But what can we do? What indeed? The brutal reality of their situation is that they have precious little agency. Mrs. Harper holds all the power. Their debt, their lodging, their very survival in this city depends on her whims. While they wait, Mary takes stock of the house. It seems quieter than usual, with fewer girls visible. Lucy is nowhere to be seen. Neither is her rumoured underage sister. Where is everyone? She asks one of the younger girls, who scurries past with a bundle of soiled sheets. Half the girls got taken for inspection, the girl replies, barely slowing. Under the new act, Lucy's sister got shipped back to her parents, and Mrs. Harper's been in a right state saying we're all going to have to work double to make up for lost income. The new act, Mary's heard whispers of it, the Contagious Diseases Act they call it, supposedly designed to control the spread of venereal diseases among military men by examining and treating infected prostitutes. In practice, it gives police unprecedented power to detain any woman they suspect of being a prostitute and force her to undergo invasive examinations. Before Mary can ask more questions, a sharp cry echoes from Mrs. Harper's office. Without thinking, she rushes toward the sound, Betsy close behind. They burst through the door to find Emily backed against the wall, her hand covering her mouth, while Mrs. Harper stands menacingly close. "What's going on?" Mary demands. Mrs. Harper turns, her face flushed with anger. "None of your business. Get out." "She's our friend," Betsy says firmly. "We're not leaving her." For a moment, it seems Mrs. Harper might physically throw them out, but then she sighs, the fight visibly draining from her. "Fine, stay. You'll hear soon enough anyway." She returns to her desk, dropping heavily into the chair. Emily here has a customer, a very special, very particular customer who's requested her specifically, a customer who's willing to pay £50. £50. The sum is staggering, more money than any of them could hope to earn in months, perhaps even a year. "Oh, who?" Mary asks, suspicion gnawing at her. "Duke of Montgomery, or his agent more precisely. The Duke has particular tastes, likes his women pregnant. The more visibly, the better." Emily's hand moves instinctively to her still flat abdomen, "But I'm not showing yet." "You will be by the time he wants you. He's booked you for 3 months from now, with regular visits as you progress." Mrs. Harper's smile is cold. "Congratulations, Emily. You've just become the most valuable girl in this house." The implications sink in slowly. Emily won't be sent away. She won't need the Whitechapel midwife. Her pregnancy, far from being a liability, has suddenly become an asset. But the cost... "And after?" Betsy asks, voicing what they're all thinking. "After she has the baby?" Mrs. Harper shrugs. "That's months away. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Which everyone in the room knows means Emily will likely be back to regular work as soon as physically possible. And the baby? Well, unwanted babies in places like this tend to disappear one way or another. "I want to keep it," Emily says suddenly, her voice stronger than Mary's heard it in days. "Whatever happens, I want to keep my baby." Mrs. Harper laughs, a harsh sound with no humour in it. "And how exactly do you plan to do that? Bring it to work with you? Rock the cradle between customers?" "I'll figure something out," Emily insists. "But that's my condition. I'll see this Duke, do whatever he wants, but the baby stays with me after." It's a bold demand from someone with so little power. Mary holds her breath, waiting for Mrs. Harper's explosion of rage, but it doesn't come. Instead, the Madame regards Emily with something almost like respect. "We'll see," she says finally. "If you bring in the money the Duke's promising, you'll have earned some consideration. Now all of you, get cleaned up. Regular customers will be arriving soon, and you've got income to make up." As they leave the office, Mary squeezes Emily's hand. That was brave. Emily's answering smile is tremulous but determined. "Had to try, didn't I? For the little one." It's a small victory in a place where victories of any kind are rare. But as Mary heads upstairs to prepare for the evening's work, she can't help but wonder what price Emily will ultimately pay for this temporary reprieve. I need to take a moment here to give you some context about the wider world of Victorian prostitution. See, what I've been describing so far, Mary, Betsy, Emily, and the other girls at Mrs. Harper's, they're what would have been considered lower to middle class prostitutes. They work in a brothel, they have limited agency, they service mostly working and middle class men. But there was a whole other world of prostitution in Victorian London. The high-class courtesans who lived in luxurious apartments, wore the finest clothes, and entertained the aristocracy and wealthy businessmen. These women operated in a completely different sphere, though they were still selling the same basic service. Picture this: while Mary is washing in dirty water and preparing to see a dozen sailors in a single night across town in Mayfair, a woman named Clara is soaking in a porcelain tub filled with hot water and perfumed oils. Clara is what's known as a courtesan, a high-class prostitute who serves exclusively wealthy clients. Her apartment is small but exquisitely furnished with silk curtains, a featherbed, and a wardrobe full of fashionable gowns. She sees at most 2 clients a day, sometimes only 1, and they pay handsomely for the privilege of her time. Today, Clara is preparing for a visit from Lord Westmoreland, a regular patron who pays for an entire evening of her company. Dinner, conversation, and more intimate activities afterward. She's never been to Mrs. Harper's establishment, never walked the streets, never had to service man after man until she lost count. But she is still, in the eyes of society, a fallen woman. The differences between Clara's life and Mary's are vast, yet both exist within the same system. Both are vulnerable in their own ways. Clara may have silk sheets and champagne, but she is still dependent on the whims of her patrons. If her looks fade, if she contracts a disease, if she offends the wrong person, she could easily find herself in Mary's position, or worse. Meanwhile, in a private club in St. James's, several military officers are gathered around a table, passing a small book between them. The book is one of London's infamous sporting guides, essentially catalogues of available prostitutes, complete with descriptions, specialties, and locations. Heard about a new place in Shepherd's Market, one lieutenant says, flipping through the pages. Supposedly has a girl who can tie a cherry stem with her tongue. Parlour trick, dismisses an older captain. Give me an experienced woman any day. These young ones don't know what they're doing. Speaking of young, interjects a third, there's a new batch just arrived at Mrs. Jennings's place, fresh from the country, according to this. They continue their discussion, debating the merits of different establishments and women as casually as they might discuss racehorses or fine wines. For these men, prostitutes are commodities to be consumed, rated, and discarded. Wait, let me stop for a second. I need to tell you something crazy I discovered while researching this. These sporting guides were totally real. They had names like the Man of Pleasure's Guide and literally reviewed prostitutes like restaurant critics. One actual entry described a woman named Lucy as a splendid creature with the face of an angel and the body of a Venus, though somewhat marred by a slight limp from a childhood accident. They'd include prices, specialties, and sometimes even addresses. Victorian Yelp for sex workers, basically. One of the officers, a Colonel Barrett, has been quiet during this exchange. Now he speaks up. I'd be careful about those places near the docks these days. Word has it they're doing inspections under the new Contagious Diseases Act. Wouldn't want to get caught up in that mess. The others nod knowingly. The Act, ostensibly created to protect military men from disease, has become a topic of much discussion in their circles. Necessary precaution, says the lieutenant. Can't have half the regiment laid up with the pox. Indeed, agrees the captain, though I hear some of the women are raising quite a fuss about it. Something about their rights. He chuckles, as if the very idea is absurd. Colonel Barrett doesn't join in the laughter. My cousin's a doctor at one of the lock hospitals, says the examinations are pretty brutal. Metal instruments, no anaesthesia, often performed by male doctors with minimal training, not to mention the stigma of being detained. They're prostitutes. Barrett, the lieutenant says dismissively. What do they expect? The colonel merely shrugs and returns to his brandy. He's seen enough of the world to know that women like Mary and Clara rarely have the luxury of expectations. Speaking of expectations, back at Mrs. Harper's, the evening is in full swing. Mary has already seen 4 customers and is preparing for her 5th. Her body aches, but she pushes the discomfort aside. The events of the past few days have put her behind on her payments to Mrs. Harper, and falling further into debt is not an option. As she washes between customers, a quick splash of water and a dab of perfume to mask odours, she hears the front door open downstairs and Mrs. Harper's voice raised in greeting. The tone tells her this is someone important. Mrs. Harper reserves her most effusive welcome for the highest-paying clients. Curious, Mary peeks over the banister. Standing in the hallway below is a distinguished-looking gentleman in an expensive coat, accompanied by a younger man carrying a small leather case. The older man is speaking quietly with Mrs. Harper, who nods eagerly at whatever he's saying. "Who is that?" Mary whispers to Betsy, who has emerged from her room to investigate the same commotion. "Don't know the older one," Betsy replies, keeping her voice low. "But the younger fellow with the case, that's Dr. Morris. He does inspections for the authorities under the new act." A chill runs through Mary. "Inspections? Here?" Looks that way. Harper must have finally decided to register the house officially. Probably thinks it's safer than operating under the radar now that they're cracking down. Registration meant regular, mandatory medical examinations for all the girls. It meant being officially listed as a prostitute in government records. It meant even less freedom than they already had. But before Mary can process this fully, Mrs. Harper calls up the stairs. "Mary, get down here. Special customer for you." With a quick, nervous glance at Betsy, Mary descends the stairs. Up close, the gentleman is even more imposing. Tall, with silver-streaked hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "This is Sir William," Mrs. Harper says, a note of deference in her voice that Mary has rarely heard. He's looking for a companion for the evening, a private engagement at his club. A private engagement outside the brothel is unusual and generally reserved for the highest-paying customers. It also comes with its own risks. Being alone with a client in an unfamiliar location has ended badly for more than one girl Mary has known. Sir William is a very respected physician, Mrs. Harper continues, clearly sensing Mary's hesitation, and a generous patron. You'll be well compensated for your time. The man called Sir William studies Mary with clinical detachment. She appears healthy enough. "However, I'd like Dr. Morris to confirm before we proceed." Mrs. Harper nods eagerly. Of course. Mary, go with the doctor to the examination room. Sir William, perhaps some tea while you wait." The examination room is really just one of the smaller bedrooms, hastily cleared of its usual furnishings and equipped with a table and some basic medical supplies. Dr. Morris, a thin man with spectacles and nervous hands, instructs Mary to undress and lie on the table. I'll just say this, Victorian medical examinations for prostitutes weren't about healthcare, they were about control. The speculum, invented in the 1840s, became a tool of both medical examination and social punishment. Women described these examinations as instrumental rape, invasive, painful, and deeply humiliating, especially when performed by male doctors with little concern for their comfort or dignity. When the examination is complete, Mary redresses with trembling hands. Dr. Morris has been impersonal but not cruel, yet the experience leaves her feeling violated in a way that her usual work somehow doesn't. Perhaps because at least with customers, the transaction is clear. This felt like punishment simply for being who she is. "You're clean," Dr. Morris tells her, not meeting her eyes as he packs away his instruments. "I'll inform Sir William." Downstairs, Sir William receives the news with a satisfied nod. "Excellent. Then we shall proceed." He turns to Mary. "My carriage is waiting outside. I trust you have something more suitable to wear?" Mary thinks of her one good dress, saved for special occasions. "Yes, sir, I'll just fetch it." "Do hurry," he says, checking his pocket watch. "I have an engagement at 9. As Mary returns to her room to change, her mind races. Who is this man really? What does he want with her? The fee Mrs. Harper mentioned is substantial, enough to significantly reduce her debt if she receives even a fraction of it. Betsy is waiting in their room, her expression concerned. Private engagement? Mary nods, quickly changing into her better dress, a dark blue wool that's only slightly outdated in its style. Some doctor, Sir William. Betsy's eyes widen. Sir William Acton, the one who wrote that book about prostitution? I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter? Mary, he's one of the main supporters of the Contagious Diseases Act. He thinks all prostitutes are morally corrupt and mentally deficient. His research is why they're able to treat us like animals. This new information sends a fresh wave of anxiety through Mary. Then why would he want, services? Betsy laughs bitterly. Men like that are always the biggest hypocrites. They condemn us publicly while visiting us privately. Just be careful, all right? Mary promises she will, though they both know caution only goes so far in their line of work. Before leaving, she impulsively hugs Betsy, drawing strength from the brief contact. "I'll watch over Emily," Betsy assures her. "You just come back in one piece." Sir William's carriage is indeed waiting, a luxurious private vehicle with the Acton family crest on the door, confirming Betsy's identification. The interior is plushly upholstered in dark green velvet, a stark contrast to the hard wooden benches Mary is accustomed to on the rare occasion she can afford public transportation. Sir William himself is already seated inside, his expression difficult to read in the dimly lit interior. As Mary settles across from him, the carriage begins to move. "You seem nervous, miss." He pauses, eyebrow raised. "Mary, sir." "Just Mary? No surname?" She hesitates. She rarely gives her real surname to customers. "Smith, sir." He smiles thinly, clearly recognizing the lie, but not calling her on it. "Very well, Miss Smith. You needn't be nervous. I simply require female companionship for a social gathering. You will be expected to be charming, attentive, and discreet. Can you manage that?" "Yes, sir." Mary has played many roles for many men. Charming companion seems relatively straightforward by comparison. Good. He reaches into his coat and withdraws a small purse, which he hands to her. "Half now, half when the evening concludes. I trust that's acceptable." Mary opens the purse to find more money than she's held at one time in her entire life at Mrs. Harper's. She quickly tucks it away, trying to maintain a professional demeanour despite her shock. "Yes, sir. Thank you." "I should clarify," Sir William continues, his tone conversational, "that while you will be expected to project the appearance of a lady, you should not forget what you are. The gentleman present will understand your true nature, though it will remain unspoken." There it is, the reminder of her place, lest she get ideas above her station. Mary has heard variations of this speech from wealthy clients before. They want the illusion of respectable company without having to actually respect the women providing it. "I understand, sir." "I should hope so. I found that girls from your background often harbour unrealistic expectations when exposed to better society. It invariably leads to disappointment." The carriage rolls through progressively wealthier neighbourhoods, eventually arriving at a stately building on Pall Mall, one of London's exclusive gentlemen's clubs. As Sir William helps her down from the carriage, he offers one final instruction. "You are my niece from the country, visiting London for the season. You are shy but eager to learn about city life. That should explain any rustic mannerisms or lack of sophistication." Mary nods, already slipping into the role. She straightens her posture, softens her expression, and follows Sir William into a world she has only glimpsed from the outside, a world of wealth, power, and privilege that exists in parallel to her own, separated by barriers far more substantial than the club's imposing doors. Inside, the club is all polished wood, leather chairs, and the murmur of cultured voices. Men in evening attire gather in small groups while uniformed servants move discreetly among them. Mary notices a few other women scattered throughout the room, all exquisitely dressed, all wearing the same carefully composed expressions that Mary recognizes immediately. They too are playing roles. As Sir William guides her through the room, making introductions to various colleagues and associates, Mary maintains her character, the innocent country niece, suitably impressed by London's sophistication. She laughs at the right moments, expresses appropriate wonder at stories of foreign travel and political intrigue, accepts glasses of champagne that she barely sips. And all the while she observes, she sees how these powerful men interact, the subtle hierarchies, the unspoken rules. She notices which of them regard her with simple courtesy and which with barely concealed hunger. She catalogues the names, the connections, the whispered asides not meant for her ears. This, she realizes, is what Clara the courtesan experiences regularly, this strange intersection of social performance and commerce, where the line between companion and commodity blurs. It's exhausting in a different way than her usual work, demanding constant vigilance and adaptation. By the time Sir William signals that they will be departing, several hours have passed. Mary's face aches from maintaining her pleasant expression, and her mind is crowded with the names and faces of men who, in other circumstances, would cross the street to avoid someone like her. In the carriage ride back to Mrs. Harper's, Sir William seems pleased. "You performed adequately," he tells her, handing over the second half of her payment. "You have a certain adaptability that served well this evening." "Thank you, sir." Mary tucks the money away, already calculating how much Mrs. Harper will claim of it. "I may require your services again in similar circumstances. Would that be amenable?" It's phrased as a question, but they both know it's not. If Sir William wants her again, Mrs. Harper will make her available, regardless of Mary's wishes. Still, the money is better than she could earn with multiple regular customers, and the work itself less physically demanding. "Of course, sir." He studies her for a moment in the dim carriage light. "You're an interesting specimen, Mary Smith, more intelligent than most of your kind. In different circumstances, you might have made something of yourself." The condescension in his tone makes her skin crawl, but she maintains her pleasant expression. "Thank you, sir." "I've studied women like you extensively, you know, written papers on the prostitute's mind and moral character. Most of your colleagues lack the capacity for genuine feeling or higher thought. They're driven purely by base impulses and immediate gratification. But occasionally one finds an exception." Mary says nothing. What could she possibly say to a man who has reduced her entire existence to a research subject, who believes he understands her better than she understands herself? As the carriage approaches Mrs. Harper's neighbourhood, Sir William makes one final observation. "The new act, the one your kind find so objectionable, it's for your own protection as much as anyone's. Disease, moral degradation, early death. These are the inevitable consequences of your chosen path. We're simply trying to mitigate the damage both to society and to yourselves." Mary thinks of the painful examination earlier, of the women detained in lock hospitals for months, of the stigma that follows even after release. She thinks of the men who spread the very diseases the act supposedly controls, men who are never examined, never detained, never stigmatized. But all she says is, "Yes, sir, I understand." Because in this moment, in this carriage, with this man who holds so much power over her future, what else can she say? When Mary returns to Mrs. Harper's, the house is unusually quiet. No sounds of customers or girls calling to each other down the hallways. For a moment, she wonders if she's walked into the wrong building. "Hello," she calls, her voice echoing slightly in the silent front hall. Betsy appears at the top of the stairs, her face drawn with worry. "Thank God you're back. Things have gone to hell." Mary hurries up the stairs, the weight of her earnings from Sir William temporarily forgotten. What's happened? Where is everyone? Police came again, with doctors this time, took half the girls for examination under the new act. A cold feeling settles in Mary's stomach. Which half? Lucy, Ellen, Kate, 6 others. Emily managed to hide in the cupboard again. Harper's downstairs, drinking herself stupid. The implications sink in slowly. The examinations aren't just humiliating and painful, they're a precursor to potential detention. Any girl found with signs of disease would be locked away in a hospital for months, possibly longer. When will they come back? Betsy's expression says it all. If they're clean, maybe tomorrow. If not, they both know what that means. The lock hospitals, places where infected women are detained until deemed cured, are notorious. Poor food, harsh treatment, endless medical treatments that often do more harm than good. It's because of the registration, isn't it? Mary says quietly. Harper officially registered the house, and now they can come whenever they want. Betsy nods grimly. Seems that way. She thought it would protect us from random raids. Instead, it's just made us easier targets. Mary sinks onto the top step, suddenly exhausted. The evening with Sir William, which had seemed like a fortunate break financially, now feels like part of a larger, more sinister pattern. The very man who championed the laws that threaten her and the other girls is also a customer, viewing them simultaneously as moral defects to be controlled and bodies to be purchased. Here, she says, withdrawing the purse of money from her bodice. I got paid well tonight. We should hide most of it before Harper finds out exactly how much. Together they count the money, more than Mary has ever earned in a single night. They set aside what they'll give to Mrs. Harper, enough to satisfy her, but not so much that she'll grow suspicious. The rest they divide into 3 portions, one each for Mary and Betsy, and a third for Emily, whose situation grows more precarious by the day. Where is she? Mary asks, realizing she hasn't seen the pregnant girl yet. Asleep. The sickness is getting worse. She can barely keep anything down. Mary's heart sinks. Emily needs proper care, proper food, rest, none of which are available in a brothel where a girl's worth is measured by how many men she can service in a night. They hide their respective shares of money in their usual spots, sewn into mattress seams, tucked into loose floorboards, concealed in the hollowed-out heels of boots. Small fortunes that grow coin by coin hidden from Mrs. Harper's grasping hands and the prying eyes of customers. Speaking of customers, I found this utterly bizarre account from a doctor who treated prostitutes in the 1860s. He described one woman who had a small metal box surgically implanted under her skin, like actually stitched into a pocket she'd cut in her thigh, where she kept her savings. She was so terrified of having her money stolen that she literally put it inside her body. Just the desperation that would drive someone to that extreme is almost impossible to imagine. The next morning brings news, though not the kind they'd hoped for. Tom the chestnut seller stops by with word from a friend who works at the Lock Hospital. Lucy and Ellen passed inspection, he tells Mary when she meets him at the back door. They'll be back today. But Kate and 2 others, they got the disease, locked up for at least 3 months. Mary thanks him with a penny and the last of yesterday's bread. 3 months. It might as well be a lifetime. By the time those girls return, if they return, their places will have been filled, their regular customers claimed by others, their meagre possessions distributed among those who remain. And Mrs. Harper's response to this disruption, to demand more from those left behind. Double shifts, she announces at breakfast, her bloodshot eyes and trembling hands betraying her hangover. All of you, we've got to make up for the lost income. Mary, you'll take Kate's regulars in addition to your own. Betsy, you'll cover for Sally. Emily. Her gaze hardens as it lands on the pregnant girl, who's managed only a few bites of porridge. You're still sick, I see. Emily nods miserably, one hand resting protectively on her abdomen. Well, you'd better get over it quick. The Duke's agent will be by next week to check on your progress. If you look like death warmed over, he might reconsider his investment. The casual cruelty of this statement hangs in the air. Emily is no longer even a person in Mrs. Harper's eyes. Just an investment whose value depends on how well she can perform her assigned role. I'll help her, Mary says impulsively. If I take on extra customers, I can give her some of my time to rest. Mrs. Harper's eyebrows shoot up. Feeling charitable, are we? Fine, but you'll still need to meet your quotas. I don't care if you sleep standing up between customers. After breakfast, as the girls disperse to prepare for the day's work, Mary helps Emily back to their room. The younger girl is shaking. Whether from illness or fear is hard to tell. She hates me, Emily whispers as Mary helps her into bed. She's going to find a way to get rid of me, baby and all. No, she won't, Mary says firmly. You're worth too much to her now. The Duke's payment will keep her happy, but they both know Mrs. Harper's goodwill extends only as far as her financial interests. If a better opportunity presents itself, or if Emily's condition becomes too problematic, the madam won't hesitate to discard her. Try to rest, Mary tells her, tucking the thin blanket around her friend. I'll check on you between customers. The day that follows is one of the hardest Mary has experienced since coming to London. True to her word, Mrs. Harper assigns her a double load of customers, a parade of men, most of whom she's never seen before, each with their own demands, preferences, and occasional cruelties. By mid-afternoon, Mary's body is screaming in protest. Every movement sends pain shooting through her lower back and thighs. Her throat is raw from feigning the sounds of pleasure that most customers expect. Her mind feels foggy, disconnected from her body as a means of self-preservation. During a rare moment of respite, she checks on Emily, who has managed to sleep for a few hours. Betsy, too, is struggling with her increased workload, though she bears it with her characteristic grim humour. If I have to fake one more bloody orgasm today, she mutters as they pass in the hallway, I'm going to lose my voice entirely. Mary manages a tired laugh. Save your strength. Harper says there's a group of sailors coming in tonight. The thought of more customers, sailors no less, who tend to be rowdier and more physical than most, sends a wave of exhaustion through her. But what choice does she have? I just want to pause here for a second. I know this is bleak stuff, but one thing that's always stuck with me from my research is how these women just endured, day after day, the human capacity to adapt to almost any circumstances, no matter how brutal, is both inspiring and heartbreaking. Mary's not a heroine in the traditional sense. She's not leading a revolution or escaping to a better life. She's just surviving, and there's a kind of quiet courage in that. As evening approaches, Mary is preparing for yet another customer when a commotion erupts downstairs. Raised voices, the sound of something breaking, heavy footsteps on the stairs. Her first thought is police, but when the door bursts open, it's Lucy who stumbles in, her face bruised, her clothes dishevelled. They're coming, she gasps, clearly terrified. More inspections. They followed us from the hospital, said they need to check everyone again. Mary, they've got a list with all our names. Behind her, Mrs. Harper appears, her face flushed with anger and fear. Everyone downstairs. Now. They want you lined up for identification. Mary's heart hammers in her chest. This is different from the previous visits, more organised, more official, the Contagious Diseases Act in full effect. Emily, she whispers urgently to Betsy, we need to hide her, but there's no time. The front door opens and male voices fill the hallway, heavy boots on the wooden floor, the sound of women being herded into the parlour. What about the hidden cupboard? Betsy suggests, desperately. They might know about it by now. Lucy or one of the others might have told them under pressure. They look around frantically for another hiding place, but their room offers few options. The bed is too low to the ground, the wardrobe too obvious. The roof, Mary says suddenly, through the attic window. She can hide on the roof until they're gone. It's a desperate plan, but it's all they have. Together, they help Emily up the narrow stairs to the attic, a dusty space used mainly for storage. The small window at the end opens onto a section of sloped roof, hidden from the street below by the building's facade. Just stay flat and quiet, Mary instructs as they help Emily through the window. We'll come get you as soon as they're gone. The fear in Emily's eyes is palpable, but she nods, understanding the necessity. Be careful, she whispers before disappearing onto the roof. Mary and Betsy barely make it downstairs before the police and medical officers reach the upper floors. They join the line of girls in the parlour, hearts racing, trying to look as calm as possible. The scene that unfolds is like something from a nightmare. Each girl is called forward, her name checked against a list. She's then taken to a side room where a doctor waits to examine her. Those who have already been examined and deemed clean are separated from those awaiting inspection. Mary Smith, calls a police officer reading from his list. Mary steps forward, her mouth dry with fear. This is it, the moment when the full force of the law reaches into her life, claiming ownership of her body in the name of public health. The examination room is small and cold, with a single chair and a table covered in a white cloth. The doctor, an older man with cold eyes and mechanical movements, barely looks at her face as he instructs her to undress. "Hurry up," he says impatiently. "I've got 12 more after you." The examination itself is brief but humiliating. Clinical probing with metal instruments, brusque comments about her physical state, notes made in a small book. No explanation, no gentle words, no acknowledgement of her as a human being rather than a potential carrier of disease. "Clean," the doctor declares finally, making a mark in his book. "Next room." The next room holds the girls who have passed inspection. Lucy is there, along with several others, their expressions a mixture of relief and lingering trauma. But Betsy is nowhere to be seen. "Where's Betsy?" Mary whispers to Lucy when she has a chance. Lucy's eyes fill with tears. "They're taking her. Said she's showing symptoms." No. Not Betsy, strong, practical Betsy, who has survived 8 years in this life, who knows every trick, every strategy for staying safe, who has plans to save enough to open a small shop someday. Before Mary can process this, the door opens and Betsy is led in. Not to join them, but to collect her things under supervision. Her face is blank, the kind of emptiness that comes from shock. 30 minutes to pack, the officer with her announces. One small bag only. While the officer is momentarily distracted by a question from one of the other girls, Mary manages to move close enough to Betsy to whisper, "Where?" "Royal Albert," Betsy murmurs back, naming one of London's lock hospitals, South Ward. "I'll come," Mary promises, the words tumbling out before she can think about whether it's a promise she can keep. "I'll find a way." Betsy's expression softens for just a moment, a flicker of her usual self breaking through the shock. "Look after Emily," she whispers, "and yourself." Then she's gone, led away to pack her meagre possessions before being transported to the hospital where she'll remain for months. Separated from everything familiar, subjected to painful treatments, her freedom entirely surrendered to medical authority. The officers and doctors leave shortly afterward, having completed their inspection of all registered women in the house. As soon as they're gone, Mary races upstairs to retrieve Emily from her precarious hiding place on the roof. The pregnant girl is cold and frightened, but otherwise unharmed. When Mary tells her about Betsy, she begins to cry, silent tears that seem to come from a place of utter exhaustion. "What are we going to do?" she asks, her voice small. It's the question that hangs over all of them now. With Betsy gone, Kate and the others locked away, and the constant threat of further inspections, their already precarious existence feels more fragile than ever. Later that night, after the last customer has gone and the house has settled into uneasy silence, Mary sits by the window in their now half-empty room. Emily sleeps fitfully on the mattress they once shared with Betsy, her face troubled even in sleep. Outside, London continues its nighttime rhythms, distant shouts from taverns, the occasional carriage passing by, the muted sounds of a city that never truly sleeps. Somewhere out there, Betsy is lying in a hospital ward, surrounded by strangers, her future uncertain. Mary thinks about Sir William and his talk of protecting women like her, about the police and doctors who enforce laws that treat her body as public property, about Mrs. Harper and her callous exploitation of desperate girls, different faces of the same system that traps women like Mary, Betsy, and Emily in cycles of poverty, abuse, and stigma. There has to be a way out, not just for them individually, but for all women caught in this trap. The next day, Mary does something she's never done before. During her brief afternoon break, instead of resting or checking on Emily, she makes her way to the public library, a place she's passed many times but never entered. Her appearance draws disapproving glances from the attendants and patrons, her occupation obvious despite her attempts to dress modestly for the outing. But she persists, asking in a quiet voice for any newspapers or publications that mention the Contagious Diseases Act. The librarian's eyebrows rise, but he directs her to a reading room where recent periodicals are kept. There, in the pages of several reform-minded publications, Mary discovers something she didn't know existed: opposition to the Acts, articles written by women like Josephine Butler, who argue that the laws are unjust, that they punish women while leaving men untouched, that they violate basic rights to bodily autonomy. Mary reads until her eyes burn, absorbing arguments and perspectives she's never encountered before. The idea that she and women like her deserve better treatment, that they have rights that should be respected, that the system itself might be challenged. These concepts are revolutionary to someone who has spent 6 months believing that her current life is all she can expect. When she returns to Mrs. Harper's, she brings with her a pamphlet discreetly given to her by a woman who approached her in the library, a member of the Ladies' National Association for the Repeal of the Contagious Diseases Acts. The pamphlet contains information about meetings, about legal aid for women detained under the Acts, about a growing movement that sees prostitutes not as moral failings to be controlled, but as women deserving of protection and respect. She shows it to Emily that night, reading aloud the parts that seem most relevant to their situation. For the first time in days, she sees hope flicker in the younger girl's eyes. "Do you think they could help Betsy?" Emily asks. "I don't know," Mary answers honestly. It's worth trying, isn't it?" The pamphlet also contains the address of a refuge, not like Urania Cottage, which focuses on reforming fallen women, but a place where women can stay while looking for alternative work, where no judgment is passed on their past or present circumstances. It's a slim thread of hope in an increasingly desperate situation. With Betsy gone, Mary's workload has increased again. Her body can barely keep up with the demands placed on it. Emily's pregnancy is progressing, the morning sickness replaced by a persistent weakness that worries Mary deeply, and Mrs. Harper grows more erratic by the day, alternating between drunken rages and periods of calculating cruelty. Something has to change, soon. The opportunity comes a week later in the form of an unexpected visitor to Mrs. Harper's establishment, a well-dressed woman who arrives in the late afternoon asking to speak with the proprietress. From her position at the top of the stairs, Mary watches the interaction with curiosity. The visitor is unlike their usual clientele, female for one thing, and carrying herself with the confident posture of someone accustomed to respect. Her clothing is expensive but understated, her manner direct but not aggressive. "I represent the Ladies' National Association," Mary hears her say to a clearly suspicious Mrs. Harper. "We're conducting a survey of establishments affected by the recent Contagious Diseases Act." Mrs. Harper's response is predictably hostile. "We're running a business here, no time for surveys or charity cases." The woman is undeterred. "We're not offering charity, Mrs. Harper. We're offering legal assistance to women who have been unjustly detained under the Act. I understand several of your employees have been taken to lock hospitals recently." Mary's heart skips a beat. Betsy. This woman might be able to help Betsy. Before she can think better of it, Mary descends the stairs, ignoring Mrs. Harper's warning glare. "Excuse me," she says, addressing the visitor directly. "I have a friend who was taken to Royal Albert Hospital last week. Is there anything that can be done for her?" The woman turns, her expression softening as she takes in Mary's youth and obvious exhaustion. "There might be. Our association is challenging these detentions on legal grounds. Could you tell me more about your friend's situation?" Mrs. Harper steps between them. "She'll tell you nothing. This is my house, and these are my girls. If you want information, you'll go through me." But the visitor has already slipped a card into Mary's hand, a small, discreet movement that Mrs. Harper doesn't notice in her anger. "Perhaps another time," the woman says smoothly. "Thank you for your attention, Mrs. Harper." After she's gone, Mrs. Harper rounds on Mary. "What the hell do you think you're doing, talking to people like that about our business?" "I just thought you're not paid to think," Mrs. Harper snaps. "You're paid to keep your mouth shut and your legs open. One more stunt like that, and you'll be out on the street. Understand?" Mary nods, properly chastised for now, but the card burns in her palm, a tangible connection to something beyond these walls, something that might offer a path forward not just for Betsy, but for all of them. Later, alone in her room while Emily sleeps, Mary examines the card by candlelight. "Miss Helen Wilson, Ladies' National Association for the Repeal of the Contagious Diseases Acts," it reads, followed by an address in a respectable part of town. A decision forms slowly in Mary's mind. Not an escape. Not yet. They aren't ready, don't have enough saved, don't have a secure place to go, but a step in that direction, a reaching out to people who might help them prepare for the moment when escape becomes possible. She will write to Miss Wilson, will tell her about Betsy, about Emily, about herself, will ask what options might exist for women who want more than this endless cycle of exploitation and control. It's a small act of rebellion, writing that letter, but as Mary carefully pens the words by candlelight using paper stolen from Mrs. Harper's office and an envelope borrowed from a sympathetic customer, she feels something she hasn't experienced in months. Hope, fragile and uncertain, but present nonetheless. Hope that maybe, just maybe, there's a future beyond these walls, beyond inspection tables and lock hospitals, beyond men who use her body and discard her humanity, beyond the life that circumstance and society have told her is all she deserves. 3 weeks pass before Mary receives a response to her letter. 3 weeks of doubled workloads, of caring for Emily as her pregnancy advances, of wondering about Betsy's fate in the lock hospital. 3 weeks of hiding her small savings from Mrs. Harper's increasingly desperate searches for extra income. The response comes via Tom the chestnut seller, who delivers a sealed envelope with a significant look that tells Mary its importance. She waits until she's alone in the shared bedroom, Emily dozing fitfully nearby before carefully breaking the seal. The letter is written in a neat, educated hand on quality paper, the kind Mary hasn't touched since leaving Yorkshire. "Dear Miss Smith," it begins. "I was most grateful to receive your letter regarding your situation and that of your friends. The Ladies' National Association is indeed working to assist women affected by the unjust Contagious Diseases Acts, and we may be able to offer help in your particular circumstances." Regarding your friend at Royal Albert Hospital, I have made inquiries. Miss Rebecca Wilson, whom you refer to as Betsy, is indeed being held there. Our association has a visitor who attends the hospital weekly, and she has been able to speak with Miss Wilson. She is physically well, though the treatments are unpleasant, and her spirits remain remarkably strong given the circumstances. Betsy is alive. The relief that floods through Mary is so intense she has to sit down, the letter trembling in her hands, alive and apparently still herself, still strong-spirited despite what must be harrowing conditions. As to your pregnant friend, the letter continues, there are several homes that might accept her once her confinement approaches. These are not like the reformatories you mentioned fearing, but places where women may give birth safely and keep their infants if they wish, while learning skills for future employment. I have enclosed information about 2 such establishments. Mary unfolds a second sheet of paper containing details of homes for unwed mothers, addresses, requirements, costs. Her heart sinks slightly at the latter. Even the most affordable option would require more than she and Emily have managed to save so far. Finally, regarding your own situation, you expressed interest in finding alternative employment, though you cited concerns about references and respectability. These are valid concerns, but not insurmountable obstacles. Our association maintains connections with several employers who understand that a woman's past need not determine her future. If you would like to discuss these matters further, I will be at Covent Garden Market this coming Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning near the flower stalls. I shall be wearing a blue bonnet with white trim. If this time is not convenient, please send word via your messenger and we can arrange another meeting. With sincere hopes for your welfare, Helen Wilson Ladies National Association. Mary reads the letter twice more, committing its contents to memory before carefully burning it in the candle flame. Evidence of outside communication would enrage Mrs. Harper, who guards her control over the girls jealously. As she watches the paper curl and blacken in the flame, Mary considers her options. Meeting Miss Wilson means missing morning customers, which means facing Mrs. Harper's wrath. But the potential benefits, help for Emily, news of Betsy, a possible path out for herself, outweigh the risks. What was that? Mary turns to find Emily awake, watching her with tired eyes. A letter, Mary admits, seeing no reason to lie to her friend, from the Ladies' Association lady, about Betsy and other things. Emily struggles to sit up, her belly now visibly rounded beneath her nightgown. At 4 months pregnant, she's beginning to show enough that Mrs. Harper has started presenting her to select customers with particular interests. The promised visit from the Duke's agent is overdue, causing the Madame increasing anxiety. What did it say? Is Betsy all right? Mary sits beside her on the mattress. She's alive, being treated harshly but staying strong. She hesitates, then adds, "The lady also mentioned places that might help you, places where you could have the baby safely and keep it afterward." Hope flickers in Emily's pale face. Really? Not like Mother Blackwood's? Real medical care, and they teach skills for other work afterward. How much? Mary sighs. More than we have right now, but we're saving, and she stops, reluctant to share her tentative plan before she's sure it's viable. Emily takes her hand. "And what? Mary, please, I need something to hope for. I'm meeting the lady from the association next week to talk about possibilities." A year ago, Mary had arrived in London full of possibilities. A letter of recommendation, savings for lodgings, dreams of respectable work as a lady's maid. How quickly those possibilities had narrowed to survival by any means necessary. Now perhaps they might expand again. Not to the innocent hopes of her arrival, but to something more modest, yet infinitely precious. A life with choices. "I want to come with you," Emily says, her voice stronger than it's been in weeks, "to meet this lady." Mary shakes her head. It's too risky. Harper's watching you closely with the Duke's visit coming. Please, Mary, I need to see for myself that this is real, that there's actually a way out of here. In your warm, comfortable bed, you can probably guess what Mary decided, because when you're trapped in a situation like theirs, hope is the most precious commodity of all, more valuable than money or connections or even health. Hope that tomorrow might be better than today, that there exists a future beyond these walls, these men, these endless nights of selling your body and soul by the hour. The following Tuesday finds Mary and Emily slipping out of Mrs. Harper's during the morning inspection. They've bribed Molly, a newer girl, to cover for them, claiming they're both with a regular customer who requested them together, a story that should hold until at least noon. They've dressed in their plainest clothes, trying to look as respectable as possible. Emily wears a shawl draped carefully to minimize the visibility of her condition. Mary carries their combined savings sewn into the hem of her dress. Not everything they've set aside, but enough to act if an opportunity presents itself. Covent Garden Market buzzes with morning activity. Flower sellers arrange their colourful wares, fruit vendors call out their prices, servants from wealthy households haggle over the freshest produce. It's a world away from the stifling confines of Mrs. Harper's establishment, though Mary notes with a practised eye the working girls who circulate here too, not actively soliciting in broad daylight, but making themselves available for arrangements later. There, Emily whispers, clutching Mary's arm, by the lily stall, blue bonnet with white trim. Miss Wilson proves to be younger than Mary expected, perhaps 30, with a kind face and observant eyes. She spots them almost immediately, her expression giving nothing away, as she finishes purchasing a small bunch of violets before approaching. Miss Smith, I presume, she says quietly, offering the flowers to Mary as if they're simply acquaintances meeting for a social call. And this must be your friend. Emily, the pregnant girl supplies, her voice barely audible. Shall we walk? There's a tea shop nearby where we might speak more privately. As they follow Miss Wilson through the market, Mary remains alert for any sign of Mrs. Harper's spies. The Madame has informants throughout the neighbourhood, shopkeepers, street vendors, sometimes even police officers who owe her favours. The tea shop is small but clean, with private booths along one wall. Miss Wilson selects one at the far end, ordering tea and scones for all three before turning to business. I must be frank, she says, her voice low enough that only they can hear. Your situation is difficult but not unprecedented. The association has helped women in similar circumstances before. How? Mary asks, equally direct. It depends on what you want. For your friend Betsy, we're already making progress. Our solicitor has challenged her detention on procedural grounds. The hospital failed to follow proper protocols during her examination. We expect her release within a month, possibly sooner. A weight lifts from Mary's chest. And then what? She can't go back to Harper's. No, she certainly cannot. The association maintains a small residence for women transitioning to other employment. She would be welcome there while she finds her feet. Emily leans forward. What about me, the baby? Miss Wilson's expression softens. As I mentioned in my letter, there are homes that specialise in helping women in your condition. The most suitable is in Hampstead, far enough from your current situation to offer safety, close enough to London for employment afterward. And they let you keep the baby, Emily presses, one hand moving protectively to her abdomen. If that is your wish, yes, they also arrange adoptions for those who prefer that option. The choice is entirely yours. The concept of choice, of having agency over one's own body and its functions, is so foreign to their current existence that Mary finds herself momentarily speechless. For months now, her body has belonged to Mrs. Harper, to customers, to medical examiners, to everyone except herself. The cost, Mary says finally. In your letter, you mentioned fees. There are costs, yes, but the association may be able to assist in certain cases. Miss Wilson studies them both. May I ask how you came to Mrs. Harper's establishment? Your letter suggested it was not entirely by choice. Mary hesitates, then tells their stories. Her arrival in London with false prospects, Emily's seduction and abandonment by a former employer, Betsy's gradual slide from factory work to occasional prostitution to full-time brothel life. As she speaks, Miss Wilson takes notes in a small book, occasionally asking clarifying questions but never exhibiting judgment or disgust. These are exactly the kinds of cases our association was formed to address, she says when Mary finishes. Women driven to prostitution not by moral failing, but by economic necessity and male exploitation. She reaches into her reticule and withdraws several pamphlets, sliding them across the table. These explain our work in more detail. Please read them when you can do so safely. One pamphlet catches Mary's eye, its cover featuring a portrait of a woman with determined eyes and a resolute expression. Josephine Butler and the Campaign Against the Contagious Diseases Acts, the title reads. Hey, I need to tell you something wild about Josephine Butler. She was this upper-middle-class woman who basically dedicated her life to fighting for prostitutes' rights in Victorian England. Like, she'd go into brothels and lock hospitals to interview women, then publish their stories to build public support against the Contagious Diseases Acts. The establishment hated her. She got death threats, was physically attacked at rallies, had rotten food thrown at her. But she kept going for almost 20 years until the acts were finally repealed in 1886. Just an absolute badass who history doesn't talk about enough. How does this work? Mary asks, gesturing to the pamphlets. Practically speaking, if we wanted to leave Harper's today, Miss Wilson considers this. It would be challenging, but not impossible. The home in Hampstead could take Emily immediately. I happen to know they have a vacancy. For you and Betsy, the residence I mentioned has limited space, so there might be a short wait. However, we could arrange temporary lodgings in the meantime. And work? After? That depends on your skills and preferences. Domestic service is the most common path, though the association also has connections with respectable workshops and manufactories. Some women choose to emigrate to the colonies, where their past is unknown and demand for female workers is high. Emily's eyes widen. Emigrate? You mean leave England altogether? It's an option, not a requirement, Miss Wilson clarifies. The association sponsors several women each year for passage to Canada or Australia. With proper references, which we can provide, a woman can build an entirely new life. An entirely new life. The concept is almost too enormous to contemplate, yet as Mary sips her cooling tea, she allows herself to imagine it, waking each morning without Mrs. Harper's inspection, working hard but for herself, keeping her earnings, perhaps even someday finding someone who might love her despite or without ever knowing her past. There is one more thing you should know, Miss Wilson says, her voice growing even quieter. What you're contemplating, leaving Mrs. Harper's without notice, taking Emily despite the arrangement with this duke, it carries risks. Mrs. Harper will not simply let you go, especially not Emily. She might send people to find you. She might contact the police, claiming theft or breach of contract. Can she do that? Legally? The law is complicated when it comes to women in your situation. On paper, you are free to leave at any time. In practice, the authorities often side with establishments like Mrs. Harper's, especially if money is exchanged to encourage their cooperation. It's what Mary feared, but needed to hear confirmed. This won't be as simple as walking away. They'll need to be careful, strategic, and they'll need help. What would you advise? She asks Miss Wilson directly. Plan carefully. Save as much as you can. When the moment comes to leave, do so without warning and go directly to a safe location. The association can help with the latter. She hesitates, then adds, and understand that even with the best preparation, there will be risks and hardships ahead. The path out of prostitution is rarely smooth. They talk for nearly an hour more, discussing practical details, how to communicate safely, what to bring when they leave, what documents might be needed for future employment. By the time they part, Mary has a clearer sense of what might be possible, though the obstacles remain daunting. "We'll help you," Miss Wilson promises as they prepare to go their separate ways outside the tea shop. "Whatever you decide, but please be careful until then." The walk back to Mrs. Harper's is tense, both women acutely aware that their absence may have been discovered by now. They separate a block from the house, Emily going in through the front door with a story about feeling ill and stepping out for air, Mary slipping in through the back entrance used by tradespeople. Mary has barely reached the kitchen when Mrs. Harper appears, her face flushed with rage. "Where the hell have you been?" she demands, grabbing Mary's arm with bruising force. "Half the morning's customers turned away because you weren't here." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Harper. I felt ill and needed." The slap catches her by surprise, though it shouldn't. Mrs. Harper's temper has grown increasingly volatile as the financial pressures on the house mount. "Ill? You look well enough to me, well enough to be out gadding about while the rest of us work." Mary doesn't correct the assumption that she's been enjoying leisure time. Better that than the truth. "It won't happen again," she says, keeping her eyes downcast in a show of contrition. "Damn right it won't. You'll make up the lost income tonight. Double shift, no breaks. And your food allowance is cut for the week." It's a harsh punishment, but not unexpected. Mary accepts it without protest, knowing that resistance would only make things worse. What matters is that their meeting with Miss Wilson went undiscovered. The possibility of escape remains intact. Later that day, when she finally has a moment alone with Emily, they compare notes in hurried whispers. No one seems to have connected their absences or suspected they were together. Their secret remains safe. "We need to tell Betsy somehow," Emily says. "That help is coming." Mary nods. "Miss Wilson said her association has a visitor who sees her weekly. Maybe they can pass a message. When do we go? To the places she mentioned?" It's the crucial question. Timing their escape requires balancing multiple factors. Betsy's release, Emily's advancing pregnancy, their slowly growing savings, Mrs. Harper's fluctuating vigilance. "Not yet," Mary decides reluctantly. "We need more money, and we need Betsy. Another month, maybe less if we're careful." Emily's face falls, but she doesn't argue. They both understand the precariousness of their position, the danger of acting too hastily. What follows is a period of careful preparation disguised as routine. Mary takes on every extra customer she can, ignoring her body's protests, squirreling away pennies and shillings whenever possible. Emily plays her role for the Duke's agent when he finally visits, projecting the perfect combination of innocence and fertility that makes her valuable commodity. Beneath these performances, they plan, save, and wait for news of Betsy. That news comes 3 weeks later, delivered again by Tom the chestnut seller. Betsy has been released from the Lock Hospital. She's staying at the association's residence, recovering her strength. She's asking about them. "Did she send a message?" Mary asks urgently. Tom shakes his head. "Just that she's safe and thinking of you both. It's enough. Betsy is free, recovering, away from Mrs. Harper's reach. One piece of their plan is falling into place." The timing of their own departure becomes more pressing when Emily reaches 5 months of pregnancy. The Duke himself is expected to visit soon to see the object of his peculiar fascination in person. If he takes a particular interest in Emily, Mrs. Harper might increase her vigilance, making escape more difficult. "It has to be soon," Mary tells Emily as they lie awake one night, whispering in the darkness. "Before the Duke comes, before anyone realizes what we're planning." "How soon?" 3 days. Friday. Harper will be busy with the bookkeeping and most of the regular customers will be home with their families for the weekend. Emily's hand finds Mary's in the darkness, squeezing tight. "Are we really doing this? Really leaving?" "Yes," Mary says firmly. We're really leaving." The plan itself is simple by necessity. On Friday afternoon, during the brief lull between day and evening customers, they'll slip out with only what they can carry discreetly. They'll go directly to the address Miss Wilson has provided, a small boarding house run by a supporter of the association where they can stay until more permanent arrangements are made. Their combined savings won't last long, but Miss Wilson has assured them that the association will help with immediate needs while they find their footing. It's a fragile safety net, but more than they've had since coming to London. The morning of their planned escape dawns grey and drizzling, typical London weather that Mary finds oddly comforting in its familiarity. She goes about her usual routine with deliberate normalcy, seeing morning customers, eating the meagre breakfast Mrs. Harper provides, helping Emily prepare for the day ahead. Beneath this calm exterior, her mind races with last-minute concerns. Have they saved enough? Will Emily's health hold up during the journey across London? Will the boarding house truly be safe from Mrs. Harper's reach? What if Betsy isn't there when they arrive? So many uncertainties, so many potential points of failure. Yet staying presents even greater dangers, the certainty of continued exploitation, the risk of disease or violence, Emily losing her child one way or another. They've made their choice, now they must see it through. The afternoon arrives with painful slowness. Mary has hidden their small bundles, extra clothes, their savings, the few personal items they can't bear to leave behind, in a coal bin behind the kitchen, ready to retrieve at the critical moment. Mrs. Harper is indeed occupied with the books, secluded in her office with strict instructions not to be disturbed. Most of the other girls are resting or preparing for evening work. The house has the drowsy quality of mid-afternoon, when even brothels observe a kind of unofficial siesta. It's time. Mary retrieves their bundles from the coal bin, brushing off the worst of the dust. Emily waits by the back door, her face pale but determined, one hand resting on her swollen belly as if drawing strength from the life within. "Ready?" Mary whispers. Emily nods. "Ready." They slip out into the drizzling rain, pulling their shawls over their heads, both for protection from the weather and to obscure their faces. The alley behind Mrs. Harper's is empty, save for a mangy cat picking through refuse, which regards them with indifferent yellow eyes as they pass. They walk quickly, but not so fast as to draw attention, heading toward the main road where they can find a hackney cab. Public transportation would be cheaper, but a cab offers privacy and speed, worth the extra expense under the circumstances. Mary's heart pounds with each step, expecting at any moment to hear Mrs. Harper's voice calling them back or to feel a policeman's hand on her shoulder, but the streets remain indifferent to their passage, filled with ordinary Londoners going about their business, none paying particular attention to two modestly dressed young women. It's almost too easy, Mary thinks, as they flag down a cab and give the driver the address of the boarding house. Surely something will go wrong. Surely escape cannot be as simple as walking away. But as the cab pulls away from the curb, carrying them farther from Mrs. Harper's with each turn of its wheels, Mary allows herself to consider a startling possibility. Perhaps they have already endured the worst. Perhaps what lies ahead, while uncertain and surely difficult in its own way, might actually be better than what they leave behind. The boarding house, when they reach it, is a narrow building on a quiet street in Bloomsbury, respectable without being fashionable, exactly the kind of place that might house working women without attracting undue attention. The landlady, a Mrs. Forrester, greets them with brisk efficiency, showing them to a small but clean room on the third floor. "Miss Wilson said you might arrive today," she informs them, lighting the room's single gas lamp against the grey afternoon. "Your friend is expecting you in the common room when you're settled. Betsy." The surge of emotion Mary feels at the prospect of seeing her again is almost overwhelming. After weeks of uncertainty, of not knowing if she was truly safe, the reality of their reunion seems almost too good to be true. But there she is in the common room, thinner than before, with shadows under her eyes, but unmistakably Betsy. She rises from her chair when they enter, and for a moment the three women simply stare at each other, overcome by the improbability of their reunion. Then Emily gives a small cry and rushes forward, and they're all embracing, a tangle of arms and tears and whispered reassurances. "You're here. You're really here," Betsy keeps saying, as if she too can't quite believe their escape has succeeded. For the rest of that day and late into the evening, they talk, sharing experiences, plans, fears. Betsy describes the Lock Hospital in unflinching detail, the inadequate food, the painful treatments, the humiliation of being treated as a disease vector rather than a human being. But she also speaks of the other women she met there, the solidarity they formed, the small kindnesses they showed each other in the midst of institutionalized cruelty. There was this girl, Annie, she tells them, couldn't have been more than 16, first time in the trade, and caught the clap right away, terrified out of her mind. We all looked after her, shared our food rations, took the blame when she broke rules, taught her how to manage the doctors. It's a familiar story to anyone who has lived in the world of prostitution, women supporting each other in a system designed to isolate and control them, the same solidarity that brought Mary, Emily, and Betsy to this moment. As night falls, they discuss what comes next. Betsy has already been at the boarding house for 2 weeks, regaining her strength and exploring options through the Ladies' Association. She's been offered work in a laundry, hard labour but honest pay, and is considering it while looking for something better suited to her skills with numbers. For Emily, the path is clearer. The home in Hampstead has confirmed they can take her next week once she's had a few days to rest from the stress of their escape. There she'll receive proper medical care for her pregnancy, with the possibility of training as a nursemaid afterward if she wishes to keep her child. "And you?" Betsy asks Mary. "What will you do?" It's the question Mary has been asking herself for weeks, with no clear answer. Unlike Emily, whose pregnancy creates specific needs, or Betsy, whose longer experience in London has given her connections and knowledge, Mary occupies an uncertain middle ground. Too experienced to return to innocent country life, not experienced enough to navigate London's limited opportunities for women on her own. "Miss Wilson mentioned emigration," she says slowly. "Canada or Australia, a fresh start where no one knows me." Betsy nods thoughtfully. "I've heard the association has good connections there. Set you up with a respectable position, proper housing, but it's far, Mary, a whole ocean away." That's rather the point, isn't it? Far from Harper, from all of this. Mary gestures vaguely, encompassing not just their immediate surroundings, but the whole system that brought them to this point. A place where I could be just Mary, not Mary from the brothel or Mary the fallen woman. "You'd go alone?" Emily asks, her voice small. Mary hadn't considered anything else, but the idea of facing such a massive journey and unknown future entirely alone is daunting. "I suppose so." "Unless," Betsy begins, then stops. "Unless what?" "Unless someone went with you." Betsy meets her eyes. "I've been thinking about it too. There's not much for me here, is there? Same bad options, same bad memories, but out there might be different." The possibility unfolds between them, not just escape from their past, but a journey towards something new, together. It's too much to process in this moment of exhaustion and emotion, but it plants a seed, a direction to consider. They talk late into the night, making plans, adjusting them, allowing themselves to hope in ways they haven't dared for months. When they finally retire to their room, all three sharing again, but this time by choice rather than necessity, Mary lies awake long after the others have fallen asleep. She thinks about the path that brought her here, the naive country girl arriving in London, the brutal education of Mrs. Harper's establishment, the gradual hardening of her heart as a means of survival. She thinks about Betsy's strength, Emily's resilience, the unexpected kindness of Miss Wilson and her association. Most of all, she thinks about tomorrow, the first day in months when she will wake up without Mrs. Harper's inspection, without customers waiting, without the constant fear of police raids and medical examinations, a day that is, in some small but significant way, her own. It's not freedom. Not really. The constraints of being a woman in Victorian London remain, the limited employment opportunities, the social stigma attached to her past, the constant threat of falling back into poverty and desperation. But it's a beginning, a foot placed on a path that might, with luck and determination, lead somewhere better. And for tonight, in this clean if modest room with the steady breathing of her friends beside her, that's enough. Days pass, then weeks. Emily goes to the home in Hampstead, where letters indicate she's doing well, her health improving with proper nutrition and rest. Betsy takes the laundry job temporarily, while continuing to explore other options. Mary helps at the boarding house to offset their costs, while meeting regularly with Miss Wilson to discuss the possibility of emigration. The association's solicitor confirms what they feared. Mrs. Harper has indeed reported them to the police, claiming theft of clothing and money, but without specific evidence or witnesses willing to testify, the case is weak. As long as they stay away from their old neighbourhood, the risk of arrest is minimal. 1 month after their escape, a letter arrives for Mary at the boarding house. The handwriting is unfamiliar, the return address missing. Inside is a single sheet of cheap paper with a brief message. Mary, heard you got out. Good for you. Harper's furious but running, scared. Police inspections increased after you left. Half the girls gone now, some saying the house might close altogether. Lucy asks after you, told her you're safe. Hope that's true. Tom. Mary reads the letter several times, emotions swirling. Mrs. Harper's establishment closing would be justice of a sort, though she knows the women there will simply be absorbed into other brothels, continuing the cycle. Still, there's satisfaction in knowing their escape contributed, however slightly, to disrupting a system that thrives on women's desperation and men's exploitation. And Lucy asking after her, that unexpected concern from someone she barely knew, touches something in Mary that she thought had hardened beyond reach. These small connections, these ripples of consequence spreading from their actions, remind her that even in the most degrading circumstances, humanity persists. The bonds formed between women like herself, Betsy, Emily, Lucy, bonds of shared experience and mutual protection, have power beyond what their oppressors recognize. It's this realization that finally solidifies Mary's decision about her future. When she meets with Miss Wilson the following day, she speaks with new certainty. I want to go to Canada, she says. Betsy too, if she's still willing, but I don't want to just disappear. I want to help first. With your association's work, Miss Wilson raises an eyebrow. Help? In what way? The women still trapped in places like Harper's, the ones in lock hospitals, they need to know there are options, that people like you exist. Mary leans forward, her voice intense. I lived it. I can speak to them in ways others can't. Before I go somewhere new, I want to reach back and offer a hand to those still caught. It's not a conventional request. Most women who escape prostitution want nothing more than to distance themselves from that world as quickly and completely as possible, but Mary has come to understand that her experiences, painful as they were, have given her knowledge and perspective that might be valuable to others. Miss Wilson considers this for a long moment before nodding slowly. It would be challenging work, dangerous, potentially, and it might delay your emigration plans. I understand, but it feels necessary, for me at least. Then we would welcome your help for as long as you wish to give it, and so a new phase begins. While continuing to plan for eventual emigration to Canada, Mary begins working with the Ladies' Association, visiting lock hospitals under Miss Wilson's guidance, speaking with women in situations similar to her own former predicament, distributing information about alternatives and assistance. It's difficult, often heartbreaking work. For every woman who listens eagerly to the possibility of escape, there are others too beaten down by circumstance to imagine change, too distrustful of help offered by respectable society, too entangled in complex webs of debt and dependency. But there are successes too. A young girl, new to prostitution and desperate to leave, placed in domestic service through the association's connections. An older woman, her health broken by years in the trade, given shelter and medical care for her final months. Small victories against a system that seems designed to consume women's bodies and spirits without remorse. Through it all, Mary finds herself changing, not returning to the innocent girl who arrived in London a year ago, but evolving into someone new, someone who understands both the harshness of the world and the possibility of resistance, someone who has experienced the worst of human exploitation, but also the strength of human connection. 6 months after their escape from Mrs. Harper's, Mary and Betsy stand on the deck of a ship bound for Montreal. Behind them, the London docks recede slowly into the distance, the city's familiar silhouette dissolving into the horizon. Ahead lies uncertainty. A new country, new challenges, the daunting task of building lives from scratch. But they don't go empty-handed. In addition to the modest savings they've accumulated and the references provided by the Ladies' Association, they carry something less tangible but equally valuable: the knowledge that they have survived, that they have helped others survive, that they have in some small way challenged a system designed to use and discard women like themselves. Emily remains in England, having decided to keep her child, a daughter born healthy despite the difficult circumstances of her conception. She writes to them regularly from the small village where she's found work as a nursemaid, her letters full of domestic details and cautious optimism about the future. As for Mrs. Harper's establishment, it did indeed close eventually, not from any single blow, but from the accumulation of pressures, increased police scrutiny, the growing campaign against the Contagious Diseases Acts, changing patterns of urban development that made the property more valuable for other purposes. The system itself persists, of course. Prostitution continues in London's streets and brothels, driven by the same forces of economic necessity and male demand, but cracks have appeared in its foundations, cracks created by women like Josephine Butler and her associates, women like Mary and Betsy, who refused to be simply victims, women who insisted on their humanity in a society that denied it. These cracks will widen in the years to come. The Contagious Diseases Acts will be suspended in 1883 and formally repealed in 1886. Women's suffrage movements will gain momentum, challenging fundamental assumptions about gender and power. Changes will come, though too slowly and incompletely, for many women caught in cycles of poverty and exploitation. But on this ship, heading west across the Atlantic, Mary doesn't know these future developments. She knows only that she has survived, that she is free, that possibilities lie ahead that would have been unimaginable during those dark months at Mrs. Harper's. As London disappears entirely behind them, Betsy comes to stand beside Mary at the rail. "Having second thoughts?" she asks quietly. Mary shakes her head. "No, just remembering. Better to look forward, I think. Nothing behind us worth keeping. Some things," Mary disagrees gently. "The good parts, the people who helped, the things we learned." Betsy considers this, then nods. "Fair enough, but mostly forward." "Mostly forward," Mary agrees. They stand together as the ship moves steadily westward, the vast Atlantic opening before them. The future is uncertain, but it is theirs to shape in ways their past never was. And for women who have lived as they have, that alone is a kind of victory. As the last light of day fades into evening, Mary thinks of Emily and her newborn daughter, of Lucy still working the streets of London, of all the women whose paths briefly crossed with hers during that tumultuous year. She hopes they too find their ways forward, their moments of choice, their opportunities for something better. It's this hope, fragile but persistent, that she carries with her across the ocean toward a new life. And as you lie in your comfortable bed, safe and warm, perhaps this hope is something worth holding on to as well. The knowledge that even in the darkest circumstances, people find ways to resist, to connect, to help each other survive. That small acts of kindness and courage can create ripples that extend far beyond their immediate impact. That history is made not just by the powerful, but by countless ordinary people, many of them women, many of them forgotten, who refuse to accept the limitations imposed upon them. Their stories deserve to be remembered not as cautionary tales or romantic fantasies, but as complex human experiences that shaped the world we inhabit today. Mary, Betsy, Emily, women like them existed by the thousands in Victorian London. They suffered, they survived, they changed things in ways both small and profound. Let that knowledge settle gently in your mind as you drift towards sleep, a reminder of both human capacity for cruelty and human potential for compassion, of how far we've come and how far we still have to go, of the quiet courage it takes sometimes simply to wake up each morning and face another day, to hope for something better despite all evidence to the contrary. Rest now, knowing these women's stories have been heard, their experiences acknowledged, their humanity affirmed, and perhaps in your dreams you'll find yourself on that westbound ship, the weight of the past receding with the shoreline, the promise of tomorrow opening like the vast horizon ahead.